Chapter 607. The shadow wolves transformed into countless shadows as they pounced forward. Kill! Under Pratz's command, Ron and the others launched a counterattack against the shadow wolves. Holy Radiance! Priest Dora shouted. She waved her staff, and a holy radiance soared into the sky, illuminating the area like the sun. In an instant, all the shadow wolves revealed themselves, leaving behind faint shadows in the air. Found them! Pratz and the others were overjoyed. In an instant, all magic and ranged attacks were launched at the shadow wolves. Boom! A shadow wolf was blasted into pieces by Pratz's fireball. Its intestines and innards scattered all over the ground. The shadow wolves were innumerable. The Sacred Domain team was able to hit them one by one. The Master Shadow Wolves were no match for the Sacred Domain team. However, the Shadow Wolves were unafraid of death. They didn't shrink back in the face of the disparity in strength. Look, good job, Dora. Monty got cut a shadow wolf in two and excitedly said. Kill them all. Hill shouted loudly. Under the attacks of Pratz's team, the shadow wolves suffered heavy casualties. Corpses littered the ground. Awoo! Seeing its underlings dead and wounded, the King Bee Shadow Wolf was finally enraged. It let out a wild roar, and its tall figure slowly disappeared. Just as Pratz's team was in high spirits, they didn't know that danger was quietly approaching. At this time, Ron, who was in the middle of battle, suddenly felt a bone-piercing chill. This was an extremely dangerous feeling. It was exactly the same feeling he felt when the shadow wolves ambushed him. Careful! Ron shouted. Unfortunately, his warning was too late. A bright light flashed by. The shadow wolf raised its butcher's knife high in the air. Kacha! A sound was heard. Priest Dora's eyes widened in shock. A large gash appeared from her chest to her abdomen. Blood was flowing out from the wound. In front of her, the powerful shadow wolf revealed its enormous figure. Its two sharp claws were dripping with blood. Dora was a holy priest, so she had long since cast Holy Shield on herself. The Holy Shield formed a faint curtain of light around her, protecting her frail body. If it wasn't for this Holy Shield, Dora would probably be dead by now. Dora! Ron cried out in alarm. He was the closest to Dora and could see everything clearly. At this moment, he gritted his teeth. Die! Ron's eyes turned blood red. His powerful soul force suddenly erupted. A white jade-like bone spear quickly formed in his hand and pierced towards the shadow wolf. This attack was both an attack and a distraction. The goal was to prevent the shadow wolf from attacking Dora again. Unfortunately, this powerful spear pierced nothing. What? Ron was shocked. At this moment, he couldn't believe his eyes. He only saw his white bone spear piercing through the shadow wolf's heart, but he didn't feel anything. He stabbed an illusory figure. Ron was shocked and angry. How was that possible? I can't attack it. At this moment, the shadow wolf let out a low growl. Its ugly face was filled with malevolence. It quickly launched a counterattack, its sharp claws flickering with a cold light. In the blink of an eye, it was already in front of Ron. Unlike Dora, Ron didn't have the protection of Holy Shield. This attack would take his life. Ron, be careful. Everyone's hearts tightened. The shadow wolf was too fast. They couldn't save Ron even if they wanted to. They could only look on helplessly as Ron died a violent death. The shadow wolf's sharp claws became bigger and bigger in Ron's eyes. Regardless of whether Ron wanted to dodge or summon White Bone's spear, it was already too late. At this moment, a figure appeared in front of Ron at lightning speed. Like a guardian angel, it blocked in front of him. Swoosh! The figure's body was cut off at the shoulder. An arm and half of the body fell to the ground. Shea! For a moment, everyone was stunned. The person who blocked in front of Ron was none other than Shea. They saw Shea's body standing straight. Her face was expressionless, as if she didn't feel any pain. Her body tilted, and she retreated a few steps. She staggered and fell. Shea! Shea! Everyone cried out in alarm. At this moment, the shadow wolf took the opportunity to escape. Ron was stunned. He caught hold of Shea, who had fallen limply to the ground. He saw that Shea's face was paler than usual. Her eyes were closed, and she had already fainted. However, there wasn't a trace of blood on her wound. Shea, Shea, what happened to you? Ron held Shaya's body and cried out in alarm. His hands trembling, Ron's tears flowed uncontrollably. At the most critical moment, it was Shaya who saved him. Ever since she was resurrected, Shaya's personality had changed greatly. She was no longer as gentle as before. Instead, she was cold and unapproachable towards him. This made him suffer again and again. However, Ron now knew that under Shaya's cold attitude, there was a passionate heart. At this moment, the others rushed over and surrounded Ron. "She's fine. She just fainted." At this moment, Ron calmed down and took a deep breath. Although Shaya's injury was serious, it wasn't a big deal. For a death knight, this injury was nothing. Even if her chest was cut open, she could still recover. "What happened just now?" "Ron, I saw you attack it," Prats asked. Ron shook his head. "I don't know what happened either. It was like I missed." At this moment, the dwarf Spark spoke. "The shadow wolf is a shadow in its normal state. It only turns into a physical body when it attacks. No wonder so many of our attacks missed." Dean Hill of Hance's Academy nodded. As the king of assassins, he was full of envy for the shadow wolf's terrifying ability. "If only I had this ability," Hill thought to himself. "If that's the case, we can only wait for the moment it attacks before we can make a move." Golden Dragon Knight Montegot said in a low voice, "Everyone, be careful. This guy only targets magic professions with weak defense." Those master-level shadow wolves were only sacrificial lambs, acting as a distraction. This king beast was the real killer. Sure enough, the shadow wolf circled around and attacked again. This time, its target was Prats. At this moment, the shadow wolf revealed its huge body in front of Prats. Its face was full of malevolence. The moment it attacked, it turned into a physical body. Now's the time. In an instant, everyone's hearts tightened as a thought flashed through their minds. Dwarf Hill growled and slammed his hammer on the ground. A dazzling light burst out, and lightning flashed in all directions. At this time, Hill spun the hammer in a circle and then threw it out crazily. Thunder strike. The hammer in Hill's hand turned into a thunderbolt, spinning as it flew towards the shadow wolf. Boom! A huge sound rang out. The shadow wolf was sent flying like a kite with a broken string. It fell heavily on the ground and struggled with all its might, but it could not get up for a long time. Attack quickly, it's already fainted. Dwarf Hill roared. White Bone Spear. Blazing Fireball. Holy Impact. Critical Strike. Pratz's team, who had had enough, went crazy. Countless spells bombarded the shadow wolf that had lost its ability to resist. Soon, the shadow wolf was blasted into a pile of meat paste. Pratz's team seized that moment of opportunity and killed the shadow wolf. After the shadow wolf died, the surrounding environment began to change. The power of the dark domain slowly dissipated, and the sun shone through the clouds, shining down thousands of golden rays. As Hill expected, it was currently daytime. When night fell, they had fallen into the shadow wolf's trap. Even as an exotic beast, after reaching the sacred domain, its intelligence was not low. When the remaining shadow wolves saw that their king had died, they all ran away with their tails between their legs. In the blink of an eye, they had disappeared without a trace. This fellow is finally dead. Everyone let out a long sigh of relief. This exotic beast from the sacred domain was really difficult to deal with. Prats came to the side of the shadow wolf's corpse and dug out an object from the pile of meat paste. It was the shadow wolf's magic core. It was white in color and looked especially dazzling under the sun. Luckily, the magic core is not damaged. Prats was overjoyed. The most valuable thing on the body of this exotic beast from the sacred domain was this magic core. If it was damaged, there would be nothing left. This was the magic core of an exotic beast from the sacred domain. In the Noah continent, the magic core of an exotic beast from the sacred domain was extremely rare. At least, Prats had never seen one before. He played with it for a while and then threw it to Hill. "Here, this is for you," Prats said. Chapter 608. Stormwind Forest was unimaginably large. The entire forest was as large as an empire on the continent of Noah. After a month of travel, they finally arrived at the legendary Moon Lake. Blink after passing through a mountain stream, they saw a group of people slowly walking through the forest. Compared to the tall trees, they were as small as ants. This was Platz's Sacred Domain party, a group of 10 people. It had already been a month since they were ambushed by the Shadow Wolves when they first entered Stormwind Forest. Seeing them again after a month, everyone had changed greatly. Everyone in Platz's party looked unkempt and unkempt. Their clothes hadn't been washed for who knew how many days. They were tattered and emitting a pungent smell. The men were unkempt, and the women didn't even comb their hair. Some had their hair tied up in a random knot. Even Holy Priest Dora, who was obsessed with her appearance, looked unkempt. As an adventurer, these were all very common. After a few months of field missions, everyone would come back looking like a barbarian. From an outsider's point of view, the life of a mercenary was extremely romantic. They ate meat and drank wine, and their teammates were filled with trust. Noble friendship and beautiful love were all interpreted in the mountains, in the fields, and under the moonlight. Wandering bards from all over the world made these beautiful and poetic mercenary lives into songs that were sung everywhere. Of course, the life of a mercenary also had its romantic side. The afterglow of the setting sun, the reflection of the lake, the mirage of the desert, the aurora of the snowy plains, and the beautiful scenery of nature were all things that one yearned for. However, in the eyes of a real mercenary, the life of a mercenary was far from being as romantic and beautiful as what others saw. The life of a mercenary was filled with boredom, hardship, and danger. Not only did they have to face the threat of powerful exotic beasts, their impromptu party was also filled with cunning, scheming, betrayal, and betrayal. Fortunately, this misfortune didn't befall Platz's team. On one hand, they were all from the Noah continent, so they naturally had to be united in this foreign plane. On the other hand, as the team leader, Platz had seen countless people. He knew who he should team up with, who he shouldn't team up with, who he should trust, and who he shouldn't. Over the past few days, they had worked together to kill many powerful exotic beasts, including the huge Adil warbear, the lightning ray flying in the sky, the powerful four-winged flying dragon, and so on. These exotic beasts of the sacred domain had their own territories, and they were all terrifyingly powerful. The battle with the lightning ray was especially earth-shattering. The Sacred Domain team was besieged by more than a dozen lightning rays. The chain lightning they released together burned a forest the size of a city into charcoal. Even so, they still made it through. After experiencing such a cruel battle, their expressions had become even more resolute. Moreover, the tacit understanding between the team had also quietly grown. After flipping over a large tree, Monty reached out his hand to the female Sword Saint Millie behind him. Millie reached out her hand naturally, and the two of them flipped over the large tree together. Up ahead is Moon Lake. Hill wiped the sweat off his face and said, "The path I took was shortened by 2 days compared to the original plan." Pratt nodded. He naturally didn't know how many days the original plan would take. However, at this moment, he trusted these two simple and honest dwarven brothers whom he had only known for a few days. "Then let's go." Hearing that they had arrived at their destination, everyone's faces revealed relaxed smiles. Among them, Dora impatiently said. After turning a corner, the long-awaited Moon Lake appeared before everyone's eyes. In the blink of an eye, everyone's expressions froze. The tranquil lake water was like a mirror, reflecting the white clouds in the sky. The lake water was so clear that one could see the bottom. An enormous round moon hung in the sky, emitting a dazzling brilliance. This is Moon Lake. Stunned by the beautiful scenery before her eyes, Holy Priest Dora was speechless for a long time. "So beautiful," Sword Saint Millie sighed. "If possible, I really will live here forever. I'll never get tired of looking at this scenery for a lifetime." Ron also took a deep breath. He was also mesmerized by the scenery before him. "Let's go down," Pratt said. Splash, splash. Ron stepped into the cool lake water, causing ripples to appear on the surface of the calm lake. A wave of satisfaction welled up in his heart. However, when he looked around, other than the endless lake water, he didn't see any moonstones. Moonstones were a type of mineral that emerged from the bottom of Moon Lake. After being illuminated by the moon in the sky for several decades, they slowly condensed into a perfectly round, crystal-like object. Where are the moonstones? Millie asked. Beneath your feet. The dwarf Spark replied. Under our feet? Everyone looked down. The water of Moon Lake was so clear that they could see the bottom. They could even see their toes clearly. However, other than the countless pebbles and silt under their feet, they didn't see any moonstones. About 3 kilometers away from them, there was another group of about 10 people. They seemed to be looking for moonstones as well. Hill smiled and said, How can moonstones be so easy to find? If you're lucky, you can find 2 moonstones in a day. If you're unlucky, you might not even find one in a few days. At this time, his younger brother Spark said, Now, there are many people who come to dig for moonstones. It is common to not find one in a few days. Ron came over and asked, What is a moonstone like? Hee, we happen to have one here, Spark said with a smile. He took out a few handfuls from his pocket and took out a round object that was beautiful. Here, this is it. Spark handed it over with a smile. Ron took it and looked at it. It was a round, milky white, semi-transparent pearl. It was about the size of a palm and was emitting a faint light. This is a moonstone. Ron looked at it carefully and secretly memorized the appearance of the moonstone. Then, he returned the moonstone to Spark. Everyone, be careful. Don't go to places that are too deep in the water. If you don't want to fight with the exotic beasts. Before they separated, Shanxio reminded them solemnly. The team split up and started looking for moonstones in the Moon Lake. The experts of the sacred domain, who were usually aloof, were like fishermen catching fish by the seashore. They touched the Moon Lake here and there, and if they weren't careful, they would fall into the water with a plop, causing the others to laugh heartily. Ron opened his eyes wide and stared at the bottom of the lake. He was afraid that he would miss a single detail. At this time, with the help of the reflection of the moon in the sky, Ron suddenly saw a trace of light strangely flickering at the bottom of the lake. What is that? Ron's heart was moved. He quickly stretched his hand into the water and carefully lifted the stone at the bottom of the lake. He saw a sparkling and translucent moonstone quietly hiding there, like a shy little girl. Moonstone. Ron was overjoyed. He quickly dug out the moonstone from the mud at the bottom of the lake and raised it high, shouting loudly. I found a moonstone. Ron's voice attracted the attention of his teammates nearby, and they all looked at him. So fast? Dwarf Shanxio was stunned. Wasn't this a little too fast? That necromancer had only been in the water for a short while, and he already found a moonstone. However, this was also someone else's luck. Even if he was envious, he couldn't do anything about it. Dwarf Shanxio was envious, but he still carefully searched, not missing a single detail. According to the agreement of the Moonstone team, whoever dug out a moonstone would get to keep it. Whoever dug out a lot would naturally earn a lot, and whoever dug out a little could only complain about their bad luck. Well done, Ron. Platt smiled and stroked his beard, saying, It seems like I have to work harder too. Chapter 609. 45 days. Pratt's team had stayed in Moon Lake for 45 days. These 45 days were extremely boring. Apart from eating and sleeping, they only had one thing to do, and that was to search for moonstones. After a month, everyone was tired to the point where their backs ached. Digging for moonstones was indeed a physically demanding task. Night fell, and a huge moon hung in the sky, illuminating the land. There was no need for any light source to see their surroundings clearly. It was as if it was daytime. After a day of hard work, everyone was exhausted. On the shore, they gathered their tents together and sat inside to rest while sharing the joy of their harvest. Hill, how many moonstones did you find? Monty got asked Prats with a smile. Not many. Only 82, Hill said with a smile. What, 82? Montagot's smile froze when he heard that. His mouth was wide open, and his face was filled with shock. No way, Hill. I heard that you only found 60 a few days ago. How did you suddenly get so many? Damn it, you've already gotten more than me. I only had 75. Aren't you always slacking off? How did you suddenly get so many? A smug smile appeared on Hill's face. He spread his hands and said, Hee, I can't help it. My luck is just too good. I've dug up more than 10 moonstones in the past 2 days, and I've already surpassed you. Montagot was unconvinced. He complained, That's not fair. You only dug for a while and then rested for half a day. In the end, you still managed to dig up more moonstones than me? This won't do. I must surpass you tomorrow. Then let's wait and see. I don't think you can surpass me. Hill chuckled. Monty got, you're not bad. I only have 36 moonstones. I'm far inferior to you guys. Sword Saint Millie suddenly spoke up. Her voice was filled with envy. I really don't know how you guys do it. Hee hee, it's nothing. Monty got laughed. Personally, I feel that digging for moonstones doesn't require any skill. As long as you're focused, meticulous, and lucky, you'll be able to find something. Oh, a hint of disappointment appeared in Millie's eyes when Monty didn't say anything. Dwarf Hill chimed in. Indeed, there is no skill in digging moonstones. It all depends on luck and foresight. If there was skill, wouldn't others have become rich long ago? I see. Hearing Hill's words, Millie nodded silently. Ron, how much did you dig up? Monty got approached with a smile. Ron was sitting on the side, quietly listening to their conversation. When he heard Monty ask him, he smiled faintly. Not much, only 182. Hearing the number Ron reported, everyone took a deep breath in unison. Wow, wow, wow. Monty shouted exaggeratedly. Ron, you actually dug up twice as many moonstones as I did. How did you do it? After saying that, he glared fiercely at Ron, as if he would eat him if Ron didn't tell him the secret technique. Didn't you say it already? Ron spread out his hands helplessly. Digging moonstones is nothing more than eyesight, meticulousness, and luck. I was just a little bit lucky. Ron returned the exact same words, making Monty so angry that he shouted, Not fair, not fair. Why are you so lucky? I don't believe it. Tomorrow, I will dig up 50, no, 100. Ha ha, seeing Montagat's exasperated look, everyone laughed. The atmosphere was very relaxed. Platt smiled. He took out some dry food and took a bite. Then he drank a big mouthful of water and said slowly, Those who still want to dig moonstones have to hurry up. Tomorrow is the last day. Dig one more day and we will leave. Hearing that, everyone was stunned. Many of them didn't plan to leave. No way, so soon. Monty was shocked. Can't we stay a little longer? After so much effort to get here, we have to leave so soon? Yes. Platts nodded. You might have forgotten something important. Platts's gaze swept across everyone's faces as he spoke slowly. We don't have much dry food left. We need to save some for the return trip. Dry food, that's right, dry food. They couldn't start a fire in Stormwind Forest. Even if they killed exotic beasts, they couldn't start a fire to roast meat. Unless they wanted to attract a large group of exotic beasts and become their target. If they didn't want to fight endless exotic beasts, the only way was to eat dry food. If they delayed their departure for a day, they would have less dry food. When that time came, they would have to starve. Whether they could walk out of Stormwind Forest alive would be a problem. After hearing Platts's explanation, everyone was enlightened. Their captain was indeed the captain. He considered the problem more thoroughly. Dora thought for a while and asked, Can we go to a deeper place to dig for moonstones? I think there should be a lot there. Montagat's eyes lit up when he heard that. He chuckled and said, That's a good idea. No. Dwarf Hill and Spark objected in unison as soon as Dora's question was raised. That will alert the powerful exotic beasts in the water. I suggest we don't take the risk. Hill said solemnly, That's right. Think about it. It's not worth it to lose our lives for moonstones. Moreover, moonstones in deep water aren't that easy to dig. Spark said. Monty was defeated at once. All right, we'll dig it not far from the shore. If that's the case. Platt stood up. We'll dig for one more day. No matter how much we dig, we have to go back. So this is the last day. Everyone do your best. Things that had been agreed upon couldn't be changed. Everyone chatted for a while before returning to their own tents to sleep. Early the next morning, everyone rolled up their pants energetically and threw themselves into digging for moonstones in full swing. With a splash, Ron's head emerged from the water. He was holding a sparkling and translucent moonstone in each hand. He smiled and said, Our luck is not bad. We dug up 2 in one go. Knowing that they were leaving tomorrow, everyone unconsciously walked towards the deep water area. Some even dived to the bottom of the lake to search for moonstones. Ron carefully put the 2 moonstones into his own space bag. Although there are more moonstones in deep water than in shallow water, and it's easier to find them, people can't stay in the water for long. Moreover, digging in the water consumes energy very quickly. Ron finally understood what Dwarf Spark meant when he said, "Moonstones in deep water aren't that easy to dig." Looking at the clear water, Ron said to himself, last time. Go to the bottom of the lake for the last time and return to the shallow water area." After saying that, Ron dived down. The shallow water plants covered the moonstones at the bottom of the lake. The water was very clear. Ron could see everything clearly. He waved his hands in the water and spat out bubbles. Suddenly, with a boom, Ron felt a slight vibration in the space at the bottom of the lake. Following that, an extremely powerful force rushed towards Ron. "What's going on?" Ron was shocked. He spat out a series of bubbles. Without hesitation, he used both his hands and feet to swim towards the surface of the lake. With a splash, Ron popped his head out of the water. He rubbed his swollen eyes and looked around. He was instantly stunned. About 100 meters away from Ron, a beautiful magical light spread out in the sky like brilliant fireworks. The air was filled with a scorching smell. "That's..." Ron's eyes opened wide. "There's a battle over there. What's going on? What's going on?" Pratz's team didn't know what was going on. They climbed out of the water in a sorry state and quickly went ashore, asking one after another. "It's an exotic beast from the sacred domain." Someone provoked an exotic beast from the sacred domain. Shanshio looked into the distance, a trace of worry flashing in his eyes. "Bastard." Pratz's face turned red when he heard that. He scolded, "Didn't I tell you not to go to the deep water area? You didn't listen. Is it necessary to sacrifice your life for 2 more moonstones?" Pratz rarely lost his temper. His team members didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Among them, some had already secretly gone to the deep water area. "Now you've provoked an exotic beast from the sacred domain. Are you happy now?" Pratt snorted and said. At this time, he understood that it was not the time to criticize. He took a deep breath and shouted, "What are you waiting for? Our team members have been attacked by exotic beasts. Hurry up and prepare for battle." "Captain." At this time, Shanshio came back to his senses. It doesn't seem like our team members have been attacked." Not our team members?" Pratt was stunned. He calmed himself down and counted the heads. There were 10 people, not one less. That means another team has been attacked. Pratt looked into the distance and said. At this time, a team in the distance began to fight. Boom, boom, boom. The battle in the distance was earth-shattering. Both sides used the power of the sacred domain. "What's that?" Ron saw the exotic beast that appeared on the surface of the water and was obviously stunned. It was a creature from another plane that Ron had never seen before. It had a lizard-like body, thick limbs, and a long tail. Its entire body was covered with hard spiked scales. It looked very mighty. The most surprising thing was that this exotic beast had several heads, and each head looked like a snake. Ron counted them and found that there were exactly 9 of them. "That's an exotic beast, a hydra." Shanshio gasped. "There's more than one. Looks like that team is in trouble." In the distance, the tranquil moon lake was surging with waves. Powerful energy surged and exploded, spreading out in all directions. Hydras were exotic beasts that lived in the moon lake. They possessed the strength of the sacred domain. The mercenaries digging for moonstones in the deep waters of the moon lake naturally alarmed them. These kings of the water wouldn't be polite and directly launched an attack. However, the team that was up against the Sanctuary-level 9-headed Hydra was not to be trifled with either. Faced with several Sanctuary-level 9-headed Hydras, they launched a counterattack, and both sides fought to their heart's content. "Should we go help?" Seeing the intense battle in the Moon Lake, Holy Priest Dora worriedly asked. No one answered. Everyone was silent. They didn't know the identity of the other party, nor did they know the strength of the other party. Dora's question was obviously inappropriate. There were also a few mercenary teams mining moonstones by the Moon Lake. Similarly, they didn't have any intention of interfering in this battle. They just watched quietly. However, the strength of this team was exceptionally tyrannical. They belonged to the same race. After losing their heads out of fear at the start, They had already calmed down and launched a counterattack, gradually turning the tide around. Just who are they? Chapter 610. They are the Dreenii, Dwarfil said. Ron noticed that this race, called Dreenii, looked very strange. They had blue skin, and except for the two horns or a single horn on their heads, their faces were somewhat similar to the Night Elves. Dwarfil continued. The Dreenii tribe is a tribe that believes in the holy light. It is said that they come from another plane. Although there aren't many of them on the Shu'Elan continent, each one of them is extremely powerful. In every war on the Shu'Elan continent, the Dreenii tribe always stands on the side of justice. Their noble character is admirable. Spark revealed a smile as he continued. I only know that Delaney clan members are all experts in jewelry. A piece of jewelry of a Delaney master would be auctioned in each auction. As for the rest, I don't know too much about it. You're right. The Dreenii's racial talent is jewelry processing, Hill said with a smile. They're a very strict race. Jewelry. Ron's heart moved. In the entire Noah continent, the sacred domain powerhouses did not have many pieces of jewelry. Even if they did, they were low-grade and extremely expensive. There were no high-grade jewelry at all. First, no one in the Noah continent knew how to make jewelry. Second, compared to the Shu'Elan continent, the sacred domain powerhouses in the Noah continent were just poor people. Look, jewelry was very useful. Wearing the right jewelry could allow the user to explode with powerful combat power. At this time, Ron's eyes fell on the soul ring in his hand. He did not know if this thing called the soul ring was a piece of jewelry. After the soul ring absorbed his soul power once, he never dared to enter the soul ring again. The danger of that time was still vivid in his mind. Until now, Ron still had lingering fears. He had almost died that time. Looking at the Dreenii again, he saw that the Dreenii warriors had gained the absolute upper hand in the war with Hydra. They were a large mercenary team with more than 30 people. There were warriors, priests, mages, paladins, priests, and hunters in all professions. Ron's gaze fell on the Dreenii hunter. The hunter was a female with 2 horns on her head. She was controlling a huge white tiger. Her combat power was extremely fierce, and her cooperation with the hunter was quite good. What surprised Ron the most was that the female Dreenii hunter could not only heal the summoned pets, but also heal herself. The Saint-level 9-headed Hydra was extremely powerful in combat. It was an enormous creature that weighed 3 tons and had 9 heads. Each head was capable of releasing magic of a different element: wind, lightning, water, fire, earth, light, darkness, life, and death. There were also many of them. Moreover, as the battle unfolded, more and more Hydras joined the battle. The number of Hydras had reached a terrifying number of more than 20. More than 20 mutated Hydras fought with more than 30 Dreenii, and the entire Moon Lake instantly became unusually lively. Magic filled the sky, and combat aura filled the ground. Water splashed like waves, and cracks continuously appeared on the ground. Previously, it was only one Sacred Domain beast that had caused Pratz's team to be in a difficult situation. Looking at the other side, there were more than 20 Sacred Domain beasts. At this moment, everyone in Pratz's team felt very ashamed. The Noah continent was still too small. Of course, it could not be ruled out that Pratz's team, which was formed at the last minute, had many problems in terms of cooperation. If they met the Shadow Wolf now, there would naturally be no problems. This was a common problem for all teams formed at the last minute. No matter how strong an individual's combat power was, without cooperation and tacit understanding, they would naturally not be able to display their combat power. Kill them, for the glory of the Dreenii race. A Dreenii who looked like the team leader shouted. He was a paladin, holding a sledgehammer in both hands. His body was surrounded by holy light, and a powerful guardian aura constantly spread in all directions, enveloping everyone in the team. The Dreenii paladin charged into the group of Hydras alone. Under his encouragement, the morale of the Dreenii team was greatly boosted. Countless magic and attacks greeted the Hydras. Quick, mages, blow off their heads. It's useless to blow off their heads. They'll grow back. Blow off the head in the middle. Priests, quickly heal the leader. The Dreenii did not panic in the face of danger. They had long known the weakness of the hydras and attacked the middle head. Indeed, after blowing off the head in the middle, it did not grow back. The hydra's heavy body fell heavily on the surface of the lake, creating a huge splash. Blood dyed the lake red and spread continuously. The battle was abnormally fierce. A gust of wind blew around the center, and a powerful magic aura burned the entire space. Pratt took a deep breath, his face full of admiration. They're really strong. It seems like they don't need our help at all. But their strength and defense can't compare to us dwarves. If we were a team of dwarves, we'd definitely be stronger than them. Hill said, somewhat unconvinced. Everyone was silent and did not respond. It was best not to casually express opinions when it came to matters of race. If not handled well, it would cause disputes. At this time, the battle was nearing its end. Under the attack of the Dreenii, more than 20 hydras fell into a pool of blood without exception. The clear lake water had turned into bright red blood, and more than 20 corpses floated quietly on the surface of the lake. More than 20 sacred domain beasts were all killed. Of course, the Dreenii also paid a heavy price. 3 of them died in battle, and 8 were heavily injured. Almost everyone was injured. Those who were injured were healed by the priests, but those who died could not be revived. After winning the battle, the Dreenii did not look happy at all. On the contrary, they were sad for their fallen comrades. After a short prayer, the Dreenii silently cleaned up the battlefield. They collected the corpses of the hydras and put them in their own space bags. The bodies of the sacred domain beasts were treasures. Their skin could be used as armor, their claws could be used as accessories, and even their teeth could be used as materials to forge weapons. It was said that weapons with the teeth of the hydras would become sharper. These hydra corpses were undoubtedly a huge fortune. There were more than 10 mercenary groups around the Moon Lake. It would be a lie to say that these mercenary groups were not tempted, but none of them dared to go up and snatch it. The angry Dreenii were too scary, and the battle just now had already proved their strength. It was over. Pratz's team breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, these beasts had targeted the powerful Dreenii. If it had been them, the consequences would have been unimaginable. At this time, Hill's eyes suddenly lit up, and he laughed. Right, now we can go to the deep water area to look for moonstones. Why? Montagot's eyes widened. My dear Hill, didn't you say that there are many beasts in the deep water area and that we shouldn't go? Montagot still had a lingering fear when he thought of the 20 or so sacred domain hydras. With his strength, he could probably only deal with one of them, and that one wasn't easy to deal with either. The power of the 9 elemental magic terrified him. You guys don't understand. Shanxio smiled confidently and stroked his beard. However, his short stature coupled with his serious expression made people unable to restrain their laughter. I believe that the battle just now has attracted all the hydras in the surrounding area. They have already been cleared out by the Dreenii. I think that it won't be a problem for us to go to the deep water area now. Really? When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but feel excited. Everyone had the same thought. They were going to leave the Moon Lake tomorrow. Only fools would not take advantage of this opportunity to dig up more moonstones. Of course it's true, the dwarf Spark said with a smile. Every time there is a battle, the surrounding beasts will be attracted. If we kill them all, there will be a blank period. That will be the best time to dig up moonstones. After saying that, Spark pointed into the distance. Look, they are starting to move. Ron focused his gaze. Sure enough, the members of the mercenary group, not far from them, had already jumped into the water. Their target was actually the deep water area. In fact, those powerful mercenary groups had the strength to fight against the exotic beasts. Unfortunately, they weren't willing to be sacrificed. Instead, they wanted to enjoy the benefits of other sacrifice. If they encountered exotic beasts, most of these mercenary groups would choose to retreat. They were clear that when there was a battle, there would be sacrifices. If too many people were sacrificed, the strength of the entire mercenary group would decrease. In that case, the wealth in their hands would become targets for others to covet. Killing and robbing were common occurrences, and the mercenary union would usually turn a blind eye to such complaints. Moreover, the dead wouldn't complain. Unfortunately, The Hydra group had encountered the Dreenii, who were known for their strictness. These races that loved to play with jewels were born to be stubborn. Even if they encountered danger, they wouldn't shrink back. Instead, they would choose to fight without hesitation. That was why the scene just now had occurred. The Dreenii sacrifice gave others an opportunity. Taking advantage of this vacuum, the mercenary groups went into the water one after another. If it weren't for the Dreenii's strength, they would have killed their way to the door long ago. The jewels these Dreenii had on them were a huge fortune. Pratz's group was weak and dressed shabbily, so they hadn't been targeted. This could be considered fortunate. All right then, we'll go to the deep water area and fight. We'll be back after dark. Pratz thought for a while and finally nodded. Faced with the temptation of the Moonstone, he couldn't help but be tempted. That's great. Dora cheered. Long live the captain, Millie said with a smile. Haha, Pratz, you old fogey, this is the best decision I've made since I met you. Monty laughed loudly. Ron also revealed a smile on his face. Splash! Splash! Everyone rushed into the moon lake excitedly. Their bare legs stepped on the water surface, splashing water everywhere. Ron also rushed into the water quickly. Suddenly, his footsteps stopped. He felt the space around him suddenly solidifying. A heavy feeling pressed down on his heart, making it hard for him to breathe. Ron's eyes widened. His face revealed an extremely shocked expression. What is this? At this moment, a change occurred. With a boom, a huge snake-like head suddenly shot out from the moon lake that had already calmed down. It broke through the water surface and pounced a few hundred feet into the air, letting out a deafening roar. Chapter 611. Everyone was stunned by this sudden attack. The huge exotic beast had come without any warning. It was a snake-like creature with scales all over its body. It looked similar to a hydra, but it was more than 10 times bigger. Its head was covered with 4 sharp horns. Save! Save me! At this moment, a weak cry for help came from the distance, but it came from the mouth of the huge head that was dozens of feet long. The captain of the Dreenii tribe, the paladin, was currently in the mouth of the huge monster. He was struggling and crying for help. The captain has been caught. Save the captain. Don't be afraid, captain. We'll save you, the Dreenii people shouted. Some of them could not hold back and rushed out, intending to save the captain in the mouth of the 9-headed battle dragon. The captain of the Dreenii paladin used his shield to block the huge beast's mouth. The sharp teeth that were as sharp as knives had already pierced through his skin as he struggled. The captain of the Dreenii tribe was extremely weak. When he saw an older Dreenii warrior rushing over with a 2-handed sword, a glimmer of hope lit up in his eyes. Save! Save me! The captain stretched out his trembling hand. His eyes were wide open, and his face was filled with extreme fear and a strong desire to live. I don't want to die. Captain, don't be afraid. I'll save you. The Dreenii warrior shouted and grabbed the captain's hand, wanting to pull him out of the huge beast's mouth. At this moment, an accident happened. At that moment, the huge beast's mouth suddenly closed, crack, blood splattered everywhere. What? In an instant, everyone was shocked, and the air seemed to stop. The Dreenii warrior who had already flown into the sky widened his eyes in shock. His blue face was filled with fear. In his hand, he was tightly holding half of a black arm. As for the captain of the Dreenii tribe, he slid down the huge beast's stomach amidst gulping sounds. The appearance of this huge beast stunned the surrounding mercenary groups digging for moonstones, especially when they saw the fierce and cruel scene. They no longer cared about the moonstones in their hands and ran ashore in fear. The captain was killed by that exotic beast. Kill it and avenge our captain. The Dreenii's voice was filled with grief and indignation. Their hatred turned into strength as they desperately attacked the giant beast. They wanted to avenge their dead captain. Ron took a few steps back in shock, his body trembling with fear. The giant beast in front of him was emitting a terrifying aura. A strange beast from the God Realm. Hurry up and run. The God Realm beasts are coming. Help. Intimidated by the might of the exotic beast from the divine domain and witnessing the cruel scene, some of the mercenaries were so scared that their legs turned to jelly. They wanted to run away, but they realized that they couldn't move at all. They could only stand where they were, trembling. Dwarf Hill was stunned. His beady eyes suddenly widened. How is that possible? Who said there aren't any God Realm beasts in Stormwind Forest? Spark clenched his teeth and said, the information was wrong. We were too careless. Exotic beasts from the sacred domain are everywhere in Stormwind Forest. It's not strange for a sacred domain exotic beast to appear here. Boom, boom, boom. At this time, the powerful Dreenii began to fight with the giant God Realm exotic beast. Ripples appeared in Moon Lake again, and countless spells and spiritual energy filled the entire space. The ground was cracking, and countless lake water was swept up into the sky. Powerful forces were constantly surging, and a hatred of the Dreenii turned into a raging fire that kept burning. Heavens! Are those Dreenii crazy? They're actually attacking a God Realm exotic beast. It seems that the one who died just now was their captain. I think they're tired of living. The battle between the Dreenii and the nine-headed war dragon shook the entire Moon Lake. The surrounding mercenaries had already retreated to the side, their faces filled with fear as they whispered to each other. What kind of exotic beast is this? It's too powerful. Monty got gasped. Those powerful Dreenii warriors can only have a slight advantage even if they use all their strength. This is an Emperor-class exotic beast with the power of the divine domain. It's also the leader of the nine-headed war dragon. Dwarf Hill said slowly. What? Nine-headed war dragon? Then, Ron was shocked, and his eyes suddenly widened. At this moment, the nine-headed war dragon let out a long roar, and its huge snake-like head fell heavily onto the water surface. Its flesh was badly mangled, and its face was beyond recognition. The Dreenii's attack was not completely ineffective. Ha! Ha ha! The Dreenii warrior stood by the lake, his face filled with the joy of revenge. He looked extremely ferocious. What God Realm exotic beast? Bulsh asterisk T. It was still defeated by us noble Dreenii. He suddenly turned around, raised his sword high, and said excitedly, We've won. Cheer for the Dreenii. Compared to the excited Dreenii warrior, the other Dreenii's expressions changed. Not good. Be careful. What? The Dreenii warrior was stunned. At this moment, a black shadow suddenly enveloped him. The Dreenii warrior turned around, only to see a huge bloody mouth pouncing towards him. In an instant, the shadow of death filled his heart, and he suddenly widened his eyes. No, boom. Blood splattered everywhere, and the pitiful Dreenii warrior was torn apart by the nine-headed war dragon. That was the nine-headed war dragon's second head. At this moment, it had already appeared, followed by the second, the third, roar. The nine-headed war dragon, which was dozens of feet tall, let out a long roar. It opened its huge mouth and spat out a pillar of fire. Boom, boom, boom. Wherever the pillar of fire went, the ground was scorched black, and not a single blade of grass grew. With all nine heads out, the nine-headed war dragon's battle was not just a small reversal. Powerful all-elemental magic and strong physical combat ability caused the Dreenii to suffer a calamity. In front of the powerful God Realm exotic beast, they did not have the ability to resist at all. They were either picked up and eaten or blasted into meat paste by powerful magic. The Dreenii suffered heavy casualties, and only a few people were left. However, these tenacious Dreenii still fought to the death and did not retreat. Those Dreenii are finished. Pratt sighed softly and closed his eyes gently, his face full of pity. If those Dreenii wanted to leave, at least half of them could escape. Now, however, there was no chance. At this moment, Ron saw the young Dreenii huntress being sent flying by the nine-headed war dragon's magic and landing heavily on the ground. Her war pet, the white tiger, was burned to ashes in an instant. The place where the huntress fell was not far from Ron. Ron hesitated for a moment before running over and helping her up. Are you okay? Treat. I need treatment. The Dreenii huntress' body was extremely weak as she spoke intermittently. Only then did Ron see that everything below the huntress' legs had been burned. Only half of her body was left, and she was extremely weak. Ron took a deep breath and said, Wait a moment. I'll save you right away. After saying that, he took out a potion of life from his spatial bag and poured it into her lips that were almost burnt to the point that they were almost dry. Ron drank 3 bottles before the huntress slowly opened her eyes. Not long after, her injured legs slowly grew back. "You're awake," Ron asked. "You saved me?" The huntress propped herself up and said. She shook her aching head. At this moment, her eyes fell on something beside her. It was a pair of double-edged daggers, which were also her weapons. The huntress struggled to get up, holding the double-edged daggers in her hands. She looked into the sky, her blue eyes filled with anger. At this moment, Ron's voice sounded in her ears. "Don't go." The huntress turned around and looked at Ron in surprise. Ron took a deep breath and looked at the huntress with eyes full of sympathy. He said calmly, "Your companions are all dead. You're the only one left. With your strength, you're no match for that exotic beast from the realm of the gods." Ron hesitated and said, "I suggest you cherish your life. Don't go." The huntress was stunned for a moment, then laughed. "Who are you? What right do you have to meddle in my business? Don't think that you can order me around just because you saved me." Ron was stunned. He did not expect to get such an answer. He did not know how to respond. Seeing Ron's expression, the huntress seemed to feel that she had gone overboard. She said in a low voice, "Thank you for your kindness. But we Drenii can be defeated, but our dignity will never be blasphemed." The huntress raised her head and looked into the sky, her eyes flashing with determination. Like the elves, the Drenii were extremely arrogant. With that, she swung the 2 swords in her hands and was about to charge out. After running a few steps, she stopped and looked back at Ron. "You saved me. I haven't thanked you yet. My name is Aini. What's your name?" "I'm Ron." Ron bit his lips and answered. "Ron." Aini muttered the name silently. Then she smiled. "Ron, I feel that you'll be a very good person. I'll remember you. Maybe we'll be friends. If I'm not dead." Aini added. Ron noticed the flash of determination on Aini's face. "Goodbye." After Aini said this, she smiled sadly. She looked deeply at Ron, as if she wanted to imprint him in her mind. Then her body swept out like the wind and made a final charge at the 9-headed war dragon that wiped out all of them. Without a battle pet, without protection, a huntress rushed forward without hesitation. Ron silently lowered his head. Unknowingly, tears welled up at his eyes. "Take care, Aini." Ron gently wiped the tears from the corner of his eyes and stood up. This Drenii girl that he met once had left a deep impression on him. Unfortunately, Ron knew that she had made up her mind and could no longer ask her to stay. "Maybe I should leave too." Chapter 612. Boom! Boom! The 9-headed war dragon had already come ashore. Its huge body, which was as tall as a 10-story building, exuded an intimidating aura. Every step it took caused the ground to tremble. Its 9 heads were constantly attacking in all directions. Frost, fire, light pillars, black flames. All 9 types of magic were cast from its body. It was as if it was a magician of all types and domains, causing great destruction. At the same time, the mercenaries who were watching the show were also attacked. Exotic beasts from the divine realm did not care about race. They attacked anyone they saw. A mercenary screamed as he was picked up by one of the heads of the 9-headed war dragon and turned into minced meat. Captain, let's go." Dwarfil was so frightened that his legs were trembling. The divine realm exotic beast in front of him was too terrifying. If they were late, they might lose their lives. "Let's go." Prats made a prompt decision and ordered a retreat. The moment Prats and the others left, a large hole appeared where they were standing. "Run! Save me! Don't kill me! Save me! My leg is broken." "Priest! Where's the priest?" The 9-headed war dragon was furious. It attacked indiscriminately. The mercenaries tried their best to escape, but how could they escape from the hands of a divine realm exotic beast? Some of the sacred realm experts who took the risk to fly were shot down by the 9-headed war dragon's elemental attacks. Save me! Save me!" At this time, Ron was running quickly. At this time, he heard a familiar voice. He looked up and was shocked. It was the female sword saint, Mill, who ran a little slower and was lifted into the air by the 9-headed war dragon. At this moment, she was so shocked that her beautiful face lost all color. She continuously struggled in a 9-headed war dragon's mouth. Unfortunately, in front of an exotic beast from the realm of the gods, no matter how she struggled. It was futile. "Millie!" Ron cried out. "Millie!" Everyone cried out. Monty got gritted his teeth. His hand flashed as he rushed up with his long dragon spear. "Don't go!" It was Dwarf Hill who shouted and stopped him. Hill stared at the giant head in the sky. His eyes were filled with fear. He gritted his teeth and said, "She's already dead. She can't be saved anymore." But Monty took a step forward, loosening his grip on the dragon spear. At this moment, Millie was already thrown into the air. Her voice was filled with despair. Prats and the others could only stand there and watch as Millie was devoured by the beast in the cruelest way possible. Strange beast from the god realm, Ron's entire body trembled. An intense fear filled his heart, but he understood that in front of this terrifying beast from the realm of the gods, there was nothing they could do. At this moment, Ron's heart lit up. He seemed to have heard something that Homeland's grandfather had once said. The scariest thing about humans was not failure, but when faced with a strong enemy, losing the courage to fight back. The scariest thing is not failure, but losing the courage to resist. Ron muttered these words. At this time, Aini's face appeared in his mind. Unconsciously, his eyes became determined, his body stopped trembling, and his legs stopped trembling. At this moment, he was like an unsheathed sword. Damn it! At this moment, Ron finally couldn't hold back anymore. The dragon bone staff appeared in his hand. With a whoosh, his figure turned into a cloud of smoke and disappeared. Ron! Shea seemed to have realized what Ron wanted to do. She wanted to stop him, but she was one step too late. "Ron, don't go." Ron was extremely fast. By the time the other teammates noticed, it was too late to stop him. The next moment, Ron's figure appeared in the air. He held the white bone spear and stared majestically at the nine-headed war dragon below. Seeing Millie struggling in the nine-headed war dragon's mouth, Ron's eyes turned blood red. He squeezed out a sentence from between his teeth. "Die." With that, he raised the white bone spear and viciously chopped at the nine-headed war dragon's eye. With a whoosh, the white bone spear pierced the nine-headed war dragon's eye. The nine-headed war dragon roared in pain. Ron took the opportunity to save Millie from the nine-headed war dragon's mouth. Although Millie was saved by Ron, she was still in shock. Her body was trembling, and her lips were trembling. She said gratefully, "Thank you for saving me, Ron. Hurry up and leave." Ron said in a deep voice. There was no joy on his face. This was because the nine-headed war dragon had already regained its senses. Its 18 pairs of eyes were staring at the human who heard it. Its eyes were filled with extreme madness and bloodlust. A sharp sound shook the eardrums. The furious nine-headed war dragon let out a long roar. Its long, sharp teeth were like knives. They flashed in front of Ron's eyes. Cold sweat flowed down Ron's face. Terror took over his body and mind. Unknowingly, his back was completely drenched. "Ron, be careful!" His teammates cried out in alarm. At this moment, Ron felt a gust of wind behind his head. It was the other head of the nine-headed war dragon. It was pouncing towards him. The nine-headed war dragon opened its huge bloody mouth, as if it wanted to swallow him like a snack. Ron could even smell the strong stench from the nine-headed war dragon's mouth. Shadowma's spell. Ron waved his staff. His body turned into a black fog with a whoosh. He quickly escaped, causing the nine-headed war dragon to pounce on empty air. The dissipating fog condensed again. Ron's figure appeared in a corner of the ground. He gently wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. His heart exclaimed that it was a close call. The nine-headed war dragon that pounced on empty air became even angrier. It let out a long roar and locked onto the place where Ron appeared. It opened its mouth and spat out a black flame. That was the power of the dark attributed head. It carried a strong corrosive aura as it blasted towards Ron. White bone shield. Ron was shocked. He couldn't use the Shadowma spell again. He made a prompt decision and summoned the white bone shield to block. Boom! The black flame continued to burn. In just an instant, it burned all the towering trees in the surrounding area. A large hole was corroded in the ground that was full of rubble. The strong impact sent Ron flying. Ron's body flipped a few times in the air and fell heavily on the ground. The white bone shield had long been corroded to nothing. Ron only felt that his body was falling apart. He couldn't muster any strength for a long time. "Damn it, my body, my body," Ron struggled to get up. He felt an intense pain coming from his body. It turned out that 80% of his bones were broken. His broken skin was constantly bleeding. Health potion. Health potion. Ron clenched his teeth and endured the pain. His trembling hand reached for the space bag at his waist. The nine-headed war dragon seemed to know what Ron wanted to do. The other head of the fire attribute quickly moved over. It aimed at the already immobile Ron. A strong fire element quickly condensed. "Ron, run!" his companions anxiously shouted. None of them could do anything against such a powerful being from the divine realm. What? Ron had just taken out the health potion when his movements paused. His eyes widened. Powerful fire elements condensed in the air. It was a forbidden spell-level power, and Ron could feel the blazing heat falling from the sky from dozens of meters above the ground. Bang! The sound of a gunshot came from the distance. The nine-headed war dragon's head shook slightly, and the flames instantly disappeared. The spell cast by the nine-headed war dragon was forcibly interrupted. At this time, the dwarf Spark's huge flintlock was emitting green smoke. "Well done, Spark," Platt shouted. "Ron, take this opportunity to escape." Ron had escaped and was inwardly rejoicing. At this time, he felt his body become light. Someone had lifted him up. It was Shea riding the nightmare beast. Shea lifted Ron onto the horse's back. The nightmare beast raised its 4 hooves and shuttled through the forest like the wind, jumping and leaping. The nine-headed war dragon got even angrier after being tricked. All 9 of its heads turned around and stared at Pratz's team. With a long hiss, all 9 of its huge mouths opened wide, and all kinds of magic were released one after another like cannons. Platz's expression changed. "Not good. It's coming for us. Run." He turned and ran. "Everyone, don't fly into the air. You'll be shot down." The dwarf hill shouted as he ran. Boom! 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 Countless flames, frost, and poisonous fog exploded around Shea. Shea controlled the nightmare beast and constantly jumped, avoiding the various attacks that fell from the sky. "Shea, thank you for saving me." Ron leaned on the nightmare beast and sincerely said to Shea, "Stop talking nonsense. If I hadn't signed a contract with you, I wouldn't have cared if you lived or died." Shea said with a cold face. Even though she had saved Ron, she still didn't give him a good face. Ron's thin and weak body was in Shea's embrace. The nightmare beast was constantly running up and down. A familiar fragrance entered his nose. Ron's heart moved. He tried to tighten his grip on Shea's waist. Ron hugged Shea's waist. He was overjoyed. It was as if he had returned to the happy times when he was in the Balarax Academy. This little action naturally couldn't escape Shea's eyes. Even though she was running at high speed, her breathing inexplicably quickened. She said coldly, "If you move again, do you believe that I won't throw you down like this? So that's how it is." At this moment, Ron smiled in his heart. He had already seen through Shea's deep concern for him under her cold face. At this moment, he simply acted shamelessly and said with a smile, "I don't believe you. You signed a contract with me. If you really leave me alone, aren't you afraid that the gods will punish you?" Shea fiercely glared at him. Her eyes were filled with helplessness. At this moment, she could only let him do whatever he wanted. However, her face remained cold and expressionless. Phew! Phew! We've finally escaped. At a small river in the Stormwind Forest, Pratz's team finally stopped. The nine-headed war dragon seemed to have lost its patience after chasing for tens of miles and did not continue the chase. "Are you all okay?" Montego glanced at the people around him and said, "We're fine. We're fine." The team leaders all reported that they were fine. Only Moore and Dora were panting heavily. They waved their hands desperately and did not answer. But fortunately, they had survived. "Have you had enough?" Shea said coldly. At this moment, Ron felt his body lighten. Then, the world around him started to spin. Plop! Ron was thrown down heavily by Shea. Shea seemed to be venting her anger on him. She used a little more strength. Ron groaned. He lay on the ground for a long time and could not get up. New injuries were added to his old injuries. He was in so much pain that he gritted his teeth. Millie could not help but say, "Shea, how could you do this? He's already injured." As Ron had just saved her, Millie had a good impression of Ron. She quickly ran over and helped Ron up. Shea frowned and looked at her coldly. She snorted and said, "He deserves it." Dora, who had recovered, immediately began to treat everyone. At this moment, Dwarf Hill came over and asked in a questioning tone, "Team Leader Prats, shall we go?" Let's go." Prats understood what Hill meant and nodded. Although there was still a day to go before the original plan, no one wanted to go back. Thinking about the scene just now, his heart still palpitated. Against a divine realm beast, it would not be strange if the whole team was wiped out. Chapter 613. After 10 days or so, Platz's team returned the way they came and left Stormwind Forest. The moment they walked out of Stormwind Forest, everyone felt the pressure in their hearts lighten. Everyone had the experience of being a mercenary. This feeling had not appeared in them for a long time, ever since they became experts of the sacred domain. This trip to Stormwind Forest could only be described as frightening but not dangerous. But at least everyone returned safely. Dwarf Hill said with a smile, "It felt good to go on an adventure with you guys. To be honest, I never thought it would be so smooth in Stormwind Forest." Platt smiled. "We were just lucky." He then paused. "Hill, do you know where we can sell our goods?" The goods Platts was referring to were all the items obtained from this adventure. Other than the moonstone that they dug up, everything else had to be sold and the money would be divided. Shanshio smiled and patted his chest heavily. "No problem, leave it to me." The frankness of the two dwarfs had become familiar to all along, and they confidently left the matter to him, while they waited where they were. Look, Hill did not disappoint. About half an hour later, someone came forward to inform them that the goods were to be delivered. The person who came was a dark-skinned, middle-aged man. He walked forward and bowed deeply. "Everyone, I am an attendant of the Pine Merchant Association. Please follow me." Platts and the others looked at each other and silently followed. In a market not far from Stormwind Forest, Ron and the others followed the attendant of the Pine Merchant Association to a very simple-looking hotel. However, in a remote place like Stormwind Forest, this was the best building. "Please come in. This is the property of the Pine Merchant Association." The attendant bowed politely and extended his hand to invite them in. Out of trust for Hill, Ron and the others walked in. As soon as they entered, they saw the two brothers, Hill and Spark, sitting at a luxurious table. Each of them was holding a huge bottle of wine. Most of the wine in the bottle was gone, and there were a few empty bottles on the table. It was said that dwarves were addicted to wine. This was not a joke. In just a short while, they were drinking. It seemed that their days in Stormwind Forest had been really suffocating. When Hill saw Platts and the others, he smiled and greeted them. His brother, Spark, let out a long burp. Both of their cheeks were red. It seemed that they had drunk a lot. "Hey, you guys are here," Hill said as he turned to the dark-skinned man sitting next to him. "See, I didn't lie to you. They're here." The dark-skinned man smiled and stood up. "Hello, I'm Neeson from the Maev clan. I heard you guys have various goods for sale." Platts looked at Neeson and did not say anything. At this time, Hill said, "Captain Platts, Neeson has worked with us for a long time. He can be trusted." "Mr. Neeson, they're a mercenary group from another dimension. They don't know much about the Shiwalon continent." Neeson said softly, "Oh, I see. The Pine Merchant Association also welcomes strong people from another dimension. The Pine Merchant Association is the third largest merchant association in the Shiwalon continent. Our merchant association values reputation, and we value long-term cooperation even more. I believe that we'll give you a fair price for the goods you've brought. You're the person in charge of the merchant association?" Potts looked up and asked. "No, of course not. I'm just the person in charge of the branch here," Neeson said with a professional smile on his face. "I wonder if we could take a look at the goods first?" Neeson asked. Platts nodded and ordered everyone to open all the space bags they had brought. They took out all the exotic beast carcasses, magic cores, and everything else. Neeson immediately called the staff of the Merchant Association over and did an inventory in the hotel lobby. The exotic beast carcasses that were taken out were sealed in the space bags. The bloodstains on their fur were still wet, and they looked like they had just died. Of course, if they were not dealt with quickly, the carcasses would spoil soon. The dozen or so staff members of the Pine Merchant Guild did a thorough check. They dissected every part of the exotic beast's body to check if there were any magic cores or broken tendons. Then, they recorded the results of the check in a small notebook. Ron and the rest sat on the chairs in the hotel lobby. A waiter had already served them exquisite drinks. Everyone chatted as they waited for the inventory results. After 2 hours, Neeson walked over with a smile on his face. A waiter followed behind him. Neeson came in front of everyone and bowed deeply. He said with a smile, "Everyone, I'm honored to tell you that the harvest this time is very good. Hill, you're really something. We've had quite a lot of free drinks here. You should have brought such customers over earlier." "Oh." Hill's eyes lit up. He said happily, "Sounds like a good thing. How many are there?" "Wait a moment." Neeson smiled and flipped open a small book. "According to our inventory, there are a total of 372 mutated beast corpses. Among them, there are 36 Saint-level mutated beast corpses, 81 complete Level 1 mutated beast corpses, 230 complete Level 2 mutated beast corpses, corpses with magic cores, 417 rare herbs, 169 rare ores. The herbs were collected by Spark, and the ores were collected by Hill. They each learned herb gathering and mining skills according to their respective talents. These were life skills that Ron and the rest did not have." Neeson went on eloquently. It took him quite a while to finish reporting the items he had counted. "So, how much is everything here worth in total?" Hill asked impatiently after Neeson finished. Neeson smiled and turned to a page. He said loudly, "According to the results of our inventory, the Pine Merchant Association gave a price." He paused for a moment. 5,680,000 ASA. 5,608,000 ASA. Hill jumped up in surprise. "Really? It's true." Neeson smiled. "We set the price according to the completeness of the exotic beast carcasses and magic cores. This price is very fair in the Snow Orchid continent." Ron looked at Hill's face. He knew that the price was fair, but he did not understand what Dassault meant. Neeson laughed. "This should be the first time you've come to the Snow Orchid continent, right? Dassault is the common currency of our Snow Orchid continent. It's linked to black crystal coins, which means that as many black crystal coins as there are, we can issue as many notes as there are. We used to use gold coins to trade, but that was many years ago." Oh, Ron was enlightened. He thought that the Snow Orchid continent was really strange. They could even use paper for transactions. Neeson smiled and said, "If you want, we can also exchange them for black crystal coins. According to our official exchange rate, it's about 1 million dazors for 1 black crystal coin. So, it'll be 5 black crystal coins plus 608,000 dazors. What do you think?" Pratt calculated in his mind. 5 black crystal coins and 608,000 Dassault were not enough for 10 people. He shook his head and said, "No need. I'll take that. Dassault." "All right." Neeson smiled politely. He then ordered the staff behind him, "Bring me 5,688,000 Dassault." "Yes, Mr. Neeson." The staff behind him answered and turned to leave. Not long after, 2 strong men came up with 2 large suitcases and placed them on the table in front of everyone. They then opened the 2 suitcases. Ron took a look and saw that there was a pile of colorful paper in the 2 large suitcases. They were tied into bundles and arranged neatly. "Wow!" Dwarf Hill exclaimed in surprise. Even Spark, who was always calm, was somewhat moved. "Money! My money!" Dwarf Hill's eyes lit up. He pounced on the paper excitedly and caressed it as if he was looking at a treasure. He sighed and said, "With so much money, how much rum can we drink?" Ron picked up a bundle of Dassault and carefully held it. The paper notes were colorful, and the most eye-catching part was the number 100. Behind the bundle of Dassault was an image that looked like both a human and a fish. It was unusually ferocious. Neeson said, "This is 5,688,000 Dassault. Each note is worth 100 Dassault. Each bundle is worth 10,000 Dassault. Please check." Ron looked at it for a while and then put it down. Perhaps it was because they had never used paper money before, but Ron and the rest did not feel anything. To them, the bundle of paper in front of them was not as practical as a box of gold. After careful checking, the amount was exactly correct. Pratt then began to distribute the money bundle by bundle. Each person received 560,000 asa. After the money was distributed, everyone was beaming with joy. The atmosphere also became relaxed. Here, this is your reward. Hill received 560,000 asa. He was so happy that he could not close his mouth. He took out a bundle of money and threw it to Neeson. Mr. Neeson, this is your tip. Thank you, Lord Hill. Neeson hurriedly received it with a flattering smile. After the transaction, the money and goods were exchanged. Pratt and the rest kept the money on the table into their space bags. They stood up with a smile and bid farewell to Neeson. Seeing that Pratt and the others were about to leave, Neeson had an anxious look on his face. He looked at Pratt, then at the hill, as if he wanted to say something, but stopped himself. Is there anything else, Mr. Neeson? Pratt felt strange and asked. Neeson moved his mouth and hesitated before saying, Sorry, this. I heard that you got a lot of moonstones from the Moon Lake. I wonder if you have any intention of trading? It turned out that after Hill sold the moonstones to the Pine Merchant Association, he unintentionally revealed that Pratt and the rest had a lot of moonstones with them. That was why Neeson asked. Those exotic beast carcasses and village materials were just small businesses. The moonstones were the real deal. Neeson was so anxious when he saw that they had no intention of selling them. Neeson said anxiously, If you are willing to trade, the Pine Merchant Association will definitely give you a satisfactory price. At least, it will not be lower than the price outside. Pratt shook his head. Sorry, these moonstones are the mission items for our trip to the Snow Orchid continent. We have no intention of selling them. I see. Neeson was defeated when he heard that. His face was full of frustration. He smiled bitterly. Sorry, I was rude. It's okay. At this time, Ron looked at Neeson and asked casually, How much do you usually pay for moonstones? Neeson was shocked when he heard Ron's question. He wanted to hug him and give him a big kiss. Damn it, this question is too timely. Neeson said smilingly. Haha, precious items like moonstones naturally cannot be traded with Desir. They are usually traded with black crystal coins. The price that our Chamber of Commerce offers is 10 moonstones for 1 black crystal coin. Neeson said with a grin. 10 moonstones for 1 black crystal coin? Pratt and the rest gasped when they heard that. They looked at each other in dismay. It should be known that the reward for accepting a mission on the Noah continent was 30 moonstones for 1 black crystal coin. Millie was so shocked that her mouth formed an O shape. After a long time, she asked, Didn't you say 30 moonstones for 1 black crystal coin? 30 moonstones for 1 black crystal coin? Neeson was surprised when he heard that. He smiled and said, Which black-hearted merchant offered such a price? You should know that even at their cheapest, moonstones can be exchanged for at least 15 moonstones for 1 black crystal coin. If that's the case, he will make at least 3 times the profit. This Lord Noah. Pratt and the rest gnashed their teeth in hatred. Even the dumbest person would know that they were almost cheated by Noah. I heard that a divine beast has appeared at the Moon Lake, and many mercenaries have died. The price of moonstones has been rising for the past few days. Neeson paused. I wonder if any of you are interested in trading now. Neeson, who was good at reading people's expressions, asked. He saw a glimmer of hope from their faces. Chapter 614. Without much effort, everyone agreed to exchange the moonstones for black crystal coins. Black crystal coins were good stuff. Unlike Desir, even if they couldn't spend it in the Snow Orchid continent, they could still spend it back in the Noah continent. According to the amount of black crystal coins each person received, Pratt exchanged for 9 black crystal coins, Hill exchanged for 8 black crystal coins, and the rest were exchanged for Desir. Ron exchanged for 18 black crystal coins, and Millie had the least with 4. And that was after Ron gave her 2 moonstones, making it 40 black crystal coins. Everyone looked at Ron with eyes full of envy. 18 black crystal coins was a huge fortune. And this didn't include Shea's, as Shea had also exchanged for 6 black crystal coins. After selling everything, Everyone's space pouches were empty. Of course, after receiving such a huge fortune, everyone was in high spirits. Of course, the one who received the most was Ron. They all clamored for Ron to treat them to a meal. With 18 heavy black crystal coins in hand, Ron was overjoyed. Naturally, Ron had no problem with treating them to a meal. The group left the Pine Merchant Association noisily. At this moment, Monty got said with a bitter face, "Prats, this desir is useless to us. We have to find a place to spend it. Look." Apart from the black crystal coins, each of them received about 560,000 black crystal coins. This so-called money would be a piece of waste paper if they brought it back to the Noah continent. They would feel sorry for themselves if they didn't spend it. That's true. Pratt stroked his white beard and muttered to himself, "Shanshio, Spark, do you know where we can spend this?" Desir. Decurry City. It was one of the most prosperous cities in the Snow Orchid continent. When Ron and the others crossed the wide stone bridge and entered Decurry City, they were stunned by the scene before them. The entire city was made of white, jade-like stones. The tall city walls were so tall that the top couldn't be seen. It looked magnificent. The spacious plaza, the tall statues, all of this made Ron and the others feel shocked. It turned out that a city could be so big and so glorious. Compared to this big city, the cities in the Noah continent were like villages. Although Decurry City looked very big, there were not many people in the city square. There were only fully armed soldiers patrolling with weapons. Their eyes were filled with vigilance as they looked at the strangers. Following the endless stream of people, they arrived at the west gate of Decurry City. It was a place similar to a business district, slightly deserted. The scene suddenly changed and became lively. The bustling shops were lined up neatly, and the countless signboards dazzled the eyes. Beautiful women of various races wore revealing clothes and stood in front of the long counters, enthusiastically beckoning customers from all over the world. Behind them, the shelves were filled with dazzling products. This is the blacksmith shop. This is the warehouse. This is the trading house. This is the tailor shop, and that is the auction house. The group of people walked on the streets of the commercial district. Dwarf Hill seemed to be very familiar with the place, and he excitedly introduced the place to his teammates from the other dimension. "What's that huge building over there?" Monty got asked, pointing at a huge circular building not far away. "That's the arena," Hill replied with a smile. "This is a place specially designed for people to duel." "Oh no, it's a place for competition. Competitions are held here every day, and there are many people who participate in every competition. They can use Dassaw or black crystal coins. Of the two parties who participate in the competition, the winner will receive a considerable amount of prize money, while the loser will be seriously injured or even killed. What about here?" Ron asked, pointing at a 4-story building with luxurious decorations. "This is a..." Hill smiled and deliberately dragged out his words, keeping them in suspense. He raised his eyebrows and revealed an expression that all men would understand. He said with a wretched smile, "This is a place where men look for fun. So it's a brothel." When the group heard this, they suddenly understood. The men revealed knowing smiles, while Dora and Mill in the group had strange expressions. Only Shay's expression remained indifferent, and she did not even look at the brothel. This is the largest brothel in Decurry City. The cost per night is at least 50 to 60,000 Dassaw. 80 to 100,000 Dassaw is also very common. Of course, if you could throw out a black crystal coin, you'll be a big spender. At this time, Hill lowered his voice and said mysteriously, "Let me tell you, don't be fooled by the high cost of this brothel. There are women of all races here, and you can do anything. Also, there are not only women here, but also men, transvestites, gays, and even more perverted ones. There are also magical beasts, strange beasts, snakes, rats. There's nothing you can't imagine and nothing you can't do." Thinking of the enchanting and graceful Naga race, Hill's face revealed an expression of fascination. It was a pity that he did not explain clearly, and the group thought that he was some kind of creature. Priest Dora blushed and reprimanded, "Stop talking. The more you say, the more disgusting it is." Ugh. Hill finally shut his mouth. Platts had an awkward expression. He coughed softly and said, "How about this? I believe that everyone wants to walk around here. Then, let's split up. When the time comes, we'll gather at a certain place. Yes." The group cheered in their hearts. They had been looking forward to this moment for a long time. The dwarf brothers naturally went to the best tavern in Decory City. Dora and Mill did not stay idle either. They walked hand in hand into the tailor shop. Platts, Montego, Hill, and more each went their own way. Only Shea and Ron were left to walk silently in the business district. After a while, Ron could not help but ask, "Aren't you going with Dora and the rest?" Shea was expressionless. "My duty is to protect your safety. Also, I don't like to go shopping." Ron smiled. "But the two of us have nearly 1,000,000 pesos. If we bring them back to the Noah continent, won't they become scrap paper?" Shea said, "If you like flowers, then go ahead and spend them. I don't need those things anyway." Ron had no choice but to drag Shea into a tailor shop. "Welcome." The beautiful attendant in the tailor shop revealed a professional smile and leisurely walked over. "Esteemed customer, the clothes in our shop are the handiwork of master tailors. Every design is the latest, the materials are of the highest quality, and the quality is reliable. Please feel free to take a look." "All right." Ron nodded and looked at the shelves. It had to be said that the clothes here were all beautiful designs that had never been seen before. Every set of clothes was personally sewn by a master tailor who had been immersed in the craft for decades. Every detail was perfect and impeccable. The whole clothes were like works of art, filled with a noble and elegant aura, as well as a natural taste. "Let me take a look at this one," Ron said, pointing to a set of clothes on the shelf. It was a woman's skirt divided into two parts. The upper body was a short jacket, the lower body was a long skirt, and the head was a beautiful hat. "You have good taste." The beautiful attendant smiled and took the set of clothes down. "This is the handiwork of Master Pujin Rang, the third best tailor in the Shualan continent. Since he announced that he would no longer make clothes, not many of his works have been handed down." Ron took it and handed it to Shea with a smile. "Try it on." "Me?" Shea was stunned. She looked at the clothes and frowned. "I don't want it. It's too cumbersome. It will affect the body's flexibility during battle. Please, this is clothes, not equipment." Ron laughed. "Besides, I didn't buy it for you. I bought it for Kadena. Help her try it on. I want to see the effect." Hearing that he bought it for Kadena, Shea did not speak. She silently turned around and walked into the fitting room. Seeing Shea close the door in the fitting room, Ron's face showed a trace of a cunning expression. This dress, this size, at a glance, it was obvious that it was suitable for Shea's tall figure. Kadena was shorter than Shea by a head. She could not wear it. After a while, the door of the fitting room opened and Shea slowly walked out. At this moment, she had taken off the heavy armor and put on the dress. Her nearly 2-meter tall body was like a model. The dress was indescribably tight on her body. "How is it? Is it suitable?" Shea fiddled with the dress and asked. No matter what, a woman's nature was to love beauty. Shea, who came out of the fitting room, wore a noble and elegant long dress. She wore a short jacket and a small waistcoat. The waistcoat was covered with a circle of white fox fur. Her long white hair draped behind her back. At this moment, Shea's whole body was filled with an elegant and refined aura. Shea was originally very beautiful. Since her temperament changed, she had a cold temperament. Now, wearing this set of clothes made by a master, she looked like a whole. In terms of beauty, she was not inferior to Kadena. For a moment, Ron was stunned. He actually forgot to reply Shea. Shea looked at Ron's expression. With a swish sound, her pale face showed a trace of blush. She angrily said, "I asked you, why don't you speak?" "Oh, this." After being shouted at by Shea, Ron came back to his senses and said with a smile, "It's very good. It fits very well. But this dress is too big. I'm afraid it's not suitable for Kadena. I think you should wear it." Shea realized that she had been tricked by Ron. She coldly snorted and turned her face away, but did not say anything. On the contrary, her heart involuntarily surged with a trace of joy. "How much is this dress?" Ron asked the beautiful attendant. 28,000 Asa. The beautiful attendant smiled and gave a price. I'll buy it, Ron said generously. Then, he bought a few more sets of clothes for Kadena, Delin, Becerra, Rainey, and Aurora. After calculating, he only spent a little more than 100,000 Asa. Chapter 615. Decurry City's commercial streets had everything. Ron and Shaya's horizons were broadened. They saw many things that Noah continent did not have. Clothes were considered cheap. The most expensive items were weapons, equipment, and jewelry. These were the real, high-priced goods. Some even required black crystal coins to trade. Don't underestimate the small business street of Decurry City. There were even sacred weapons in the weapon shops. Ron took a fancy to a sacred weapon. It was a water attribute magic staff called Water God's Blessing. The shop owner offered 15 black crystal coins. After some bargaining, Ron bought it for 13 black crystal coins. Even so, he still thought it was cheap. In the shops of Noah continent, a sacred weapon would cost at least 20 black crystal coins. Moreover, it wasn't even this good. This magic staff was naturally given to his wife, Kadena. Ron looked around and strolled around Shaya. He had spent quite a lot of black crystal coins, but he still had more than 600,000 pesos left. Basically, Ron wasn't interested in flashy things like clothes. However, he couldn't afford the things he really wanted to buy. For example, he saw a sacred weapon composite bow called Night Shadow's Assassination Bow in another weapon shop. He wanted to buy it for Aurora. This bow had good attributes and even had an attack bonus. Unfortunately, the shop owner offered 25 black crystal coins. Ron couldn't come to an agreement and could only give up. Unknowingly, the sky gradually darkened. Ron returned to the meeting point as planned. One after another, the members of Pratz's team returned. They all had their own gains. Dora was a shopaholic. She bought a lot of clothes, jewelry, and the like. She also bought a refined priest robe that increased magic defense. She had spent all the black crystal coins she brought with her. She also didn't have much left. Millie was about the same. She bought a woman's breastplate that increased defense. Actually, she wanted to buy a sacred weapon the most. Unfortunately, she didn't have enough money on her. Prats, Montego, Hill, and the others were about the same. They spent all the black crystal coins they had on them and bought the things they needed. On the other hand, Shanxio and Spark were both drunk. Only God knew if they had been drinking since noon. You are. When everyone saw Shaya, they were all stunned. They saw a beautiful human woman standing in front of everyone. She was wearing a noble and elegant long dress. Her snow-white hair exuded a cold aura. Shaya gently pulled her hair, her expression still cold. Are you Shaya? Prats came back to his senses. He didn't expect Shaya to have such a huge change. Shaya, you're so beautiful. Did you buy these clothes at the tailor shop? Dora happily came over and gently fiddled with Shaya's clothes. Thank you, Shaya said lightly. Dora chatted with Shaya for a while before letting go. She quickly lost interest. To the experts of the sacred domain, strength was the only thing they cared about the most. Let's go eat. My stomach is growling. Montego rubbed his stomach and said with a smile, I heard someone promised to treat us today. Hill raised his eyebrows at Ron. What he meant was, you know what I mean? Ron replied with a faint smile. No problem. The two dwarves instantly became spirited when they heard the word eat. Hill laughed and said, Ron, it's your treat. We have to drink to our heart's content. Don't think it's expensive when the time comes. All right, lead the way. Ron pushed him with a smile. Night fell. Ron and the others arrived at a brightly lit hotel in Decurry City. The environment was elegant and the decorations were luxurious. Sitting in a lobby, one would feel as if they were in the middle of a mountain. There was a small bridge, flowing water, melodious saxophones, and a master pianist playing. Countless waiters in tuxedos walked back and forth with trays in their hands. They served the customers enthusiastically as if they were gods. Cheers! On a huge rectangular table, 10 glasses of rum were clinking together. Everyone's face was flushed, and they had a relaxed and joyful expression as if they had completed a mission. Other than the Dwarf Hill and Spark, who were addicted to alcohol, only Montego accompanied them. The others only took a sip. At this time, a waiter pushed a small cart over. There was a huge piece of meat on it. The meat was black in cross-section, and its skin was covered with a layer of white frost. Come, come, eat. Hill greeted them enthusiastically. This is the wild boar retreat from Altai Mountain. If you didn't make a reservation, you wouldn't be able to eat it so easily. As he spoke, he took a knife and cut it, giving everyone a piece. He was not tall enough to reach the table, so he could only stand on the chair. The dwarf Spark picked up his glass and clinked it with Pratz's. He asked, "Are you going back tomorrow?" "Yes." Pratt smiled and nodded. "We have our own things to do. We can't stay in the Shualon continent for long." "What a pity." Spark smiled. "It was a pleasure to work with you. To be honest, you're the most unique humans I have ever seen. I really hope we can work together again in the future." Everyone's face darkened. Everyone knew that this was impossible. In the Noah continent, mercenary teams that were formed temporarily might not meet again after parting, let alone a cross-dimensional team. "Let's eat." Hill silently pierced a piece of meat with his knife and placed it on the plate in front of Spark. His face was also a little sad. Everyone fell silent and ate in silence. They did not seem to be as excited as before. Instead, it was more of a reluctance before parting. The sharp knife cut a piece of meat. The meat was very tender, and the juice inside slowly seeped out. Ron cut a piece and stabbed it with a fork. Just as he was about to put it into his mouth, his body shook, and his gaze froze. The door of the hotel was pushed open, and a group of people filed in. Needless to say, they were all here to eat. He did not know what race they were, but their faces were very strange. Their skin was dark and rough, as if they were covered with a layer of scales. In the Shualon continent, for nearly a month, Ron had seen all kinds of races. There were even more that he did not know. These races that he did not know were not the reason that attracted him. His gaze fell behind those races. It was a delicate and beautiful girl. Ron was sure that she was not a human. However, from her professional attire and energy waves, Ron felt something familiar. Necromancer. She was actually a necromancer. After being in the Shualon continent for so long, this was the first time Ron had seen a necromancer. According to Dwarf Hill, necromancers were rarer than dragons in the Shualon continent. Ron saw the young necromancer. Coincidentally, the young necromancer also looked over. Her expression was slightly surprised, as if she was also very surprised. After the young girl glanced at Ron, she immediately lowered her head. Her expression returned to normal, as if she did not see Ron at all. She followed those unknown races in front of her and silently walked to a table not far from Ron and sat down. "Ron, what's wrong with you?" Millie, who was beside him, used her arm to gently touch Ron, who seemed to be in a daze. "Ah, nothing." Ron immediately came back to his senses. He smiled awkwardly and put the meat on the fork into his mouth. "What's wrong with you recently? I feel like you're always distracted." Millie asked with concern. Since Ron had saved her before, she became closer to Ron. "I'm afraid you saw a beauty," Shea said faintly. Since those people came in, she had been watching coldly from the sidelines. Naturally, she saw the young necromancer. Ron glanced at the table and saw the young girl sitting obediently on the chair. She did not say a word, as if she was thinking about something. Beside her, those burly men of unknown races sat down casually and talked loudly without restraint. The young girl did not seem to fit in with those races at all. "Hee, it's just a necromancer. There's nothing to be curious about." Ron secretly laughed at himself for thinking too much. Necromancers were rare in the Shualon continent, but it was not a rare profession in the Noah continent. Although Ron was a little surprised, it was not worth making a fuss about. Ron withdrew his gaze and no longer cared about the necromancer. Instead, he began to focus on destroying the food in front of him. After a while, the dishes were also on the table. Those unknown races began to eat in big mouthfuls. Some of them even drank wine. "As long as we bring her back, we'll have done a meritorious deed." At this time, a voice entered Ron's ears. Ron's heart skipped a beat, and his attention was immediately drawn over. Ron noticed that those races looked like beasts. Their mouths had densely packed teeth like combs that were incomparably sharp. They stood on their four limbs like humans. Their bodies were tall and sturdy, and the muscles on their arms and necks were tight. In contrast, their lower limbs were thin but slender, as if they did not have much strength. What race are they? Who is that necromancer girl? Ron's heart was filled with questions. As he was observing, he saw the young girl suddenly whisper something to one of them. That person said a few words to the others. One of them nodded, and the young girl immediately stood up. The young girl slowly left the table and moved her feet. That person also followed closely behind. What was surprising was that the young girl actually walked towards Ron's position. The young girl was expressionless, as if she did not even look at Ron. She walked past him with her head held high, passed by his table, and went straight ahead. Ron was feeling strange. At this time, he suddenly realized that there was something in his hand. He looked down and saw that it was a crumpled-up piece of paper. What is this? When did it appear? Ron's heart skipped a beat. He looked around, and when he saw that no one was paying attention to him, he carefully unfolded the paper ball in his hand. He saw that in the crumpled paper ball, there were a few small words written with a pen. Chapter 6:16. Ron held the note in a daze. He did not know why the girl would give him such a note. Perhaps it was because he was a necromancer? What's wrong? Ron. Seeing Ron's absent-minded look, Platz asked with concern. Ron hesitated for a moment, then took out the note and said, "This was given to me by the girl just now." Everyone passed the note around and looked at it. Their faces were all stunned. Millie said, "What does this girl mean? Looks like she needs help." Dora looked at the note and said, "I just don't know why she chose you out of so many people. Maybe it's because I'm a necromancer too." Ron shrugged and said, "We're of the same profession. So, Ron, are you planning to help?" Millie, who was sitting next to him, put down her wine glass and said. Ron pondered for a moment, then slowly nodded. "Yes. All right, Ron. If you're willing to help, I'll consider helping as well." Millie blinked her eyes and smiled sweetly at Ron. Chapter 1. Thank you. But there's no need. I think I'll be enough by myself. Ron smiled and politely refused. Ron said this because he was confident. From the aura of those people, there were only 2 powerhouses of the sacred domain among the 10 of them. The rest were all masters and masters. Ron believed that he should be able to handle it alone. That doesn't seem to be a good idea, does it? Moore scratched his head. We don't know her identity, nor do we know what she did. It doesn't seem appropriate to rashly intervene, but she's of the undead. Since she asked me for help, I can't just sit by and watch. Ron's attitude was firm. Maybe she's being held hostage by these people. Ron, I advise you not to. At this time, a sudden voice interrupted Ron's argument. It was Hillman. He slowly put down his wine glass and stared at the unknown race at the table with a trace of worry in his eyes. He said in a deep voice, "Ron, do you know who they are?" "Who are they?" Ron asked. He could feel that Hillman, who had always been carefree, was deeply afraid of the race in front of him. The Nagasee clan. Hillman softly spat out a sentence. His small bean-like eyes narrowed slightly, emitting a trace of light. The Nagasee clan is the most powerful force in the Shu'alan continent. They occupy 4/5 of the Shu'alan continent's ocean. As a superior race, they are extremely powerful. They are extremely arrogant and rude. Hundreds of countries and dozens of races in the Shu'alan continent hate and fear this race. But there is nothing we can do. Hillman took a deep breath. This group of Nagasee clan is not to be trifled with. Not only are they powerful, but they also have an unparalleled influence in the Shu'alan continent. They are a marine race, and their navy is extremely powerful. They can land at any point in the Shu'alan continent to attack them. When they fail, they will retreat to the ocean, so they can always be in an invincible position, and the races on the land can't do anything to them. They are all afraid of the continent. At this point, the necromancer girl came back, followed by the Nagasee clan person. It seemed that she had just been escorted back on the pretext of going to the toilet. This time, she did not pass by Ron, but walked directly to her seat. Hillman withdrew his gaze and said solemnly, Ron, I advise you to be careful. If you choose to fight, you may not be able to leave the Shualan continent. Hillman's words made everyone silent. Even a Cataclysm, who supported Ron, also wanted to retreat. She was wondering if she should get involved in this mess. Pratt picked up a glass of wine on the table and drank it gently. He then put down the glass and said to Ron, Ron, what do you think? Ron lowered his head and thought quickly. He then raised his head, and there was a determined light in his eyes. Maybe I'm too stubborn, but I don't know why, but I feel that this girl's origin is not simple. I have no reason not to save her. Pratt was not surprised by Ron's answer. He just nodded slightly. If that's the case, Ron, I have to tell you seriously, he paused for a moment. If you really want to save them, we'll have to split up. This is also for the safety of the team. Ron, you can only act alone if you really make the choice. I can't risk the safety of the team with you. Pratt showed his cards directly. He said to Ron seriously, if you want to fight, you have to bear the consequences alone. As if he had expected Pratt's answer, Ron smiled. You don't have to say any more, Dean Pratt. I understand. It's good that you understand. Pratt sighed in relief. Then we can only go back first. Everyone, let's go. Cataclysm. Wait. As Pratt was speaking, Shea interrupted coldly. Dean Pratt, you seem to have forgotten someone. Pratt was stunned for a moment. He looked at Shea, who was wearing a noble dress. Shea slowly stood up and said coldly, I am Ron's guardian knight. My duty is to protect him. No matter what, I want to be with him. Shea's eyes were unusually firm. Even if she knew how powerful the Naga Sirens were, she still did not choose to retreat. Ron was a little touched. It's okay, Shea. You go back first. I can handle it alone. Shea snorted coldly, rolled her eyes at Ron, and looked away. Her meaning was self-evident. Seeing Shea's firm attitude, Ron was a little helpless. Shea had always been like this when she was alive and when she became a Death Knight. Pratt nodded. Shea, if you want to stay, then stay. The rest of you, follow me back to the Noah continent. Everyone has finished eating. Let's part here. Pratt stood up, and Ron followed. Ron called the hotel waiter, took out Dassaw from his space bag, and paid the bill. This meal was not cheap. It cost 50,000 Dassaw. Of course, it was only a small amount for Ron. He still had hundreds of thousands of Dassaw left, so it was meaningless to take it back. After paying the bill, Ron and the others walked out of the most luxurious hotel in Dekery City, chatting and laughing. Although he had chosen to stay, Ron did not reveal any flaws. He was playing loudly with his teammates while secretly looking at the necromancer girl at the table. Seeing them leave, the necromancer girl's face showed obvious disappointment. Her long eyelashes drooped, as if she was thinking about something. Soon, Pratt's team walked downstairs. Before they parted, Pratt said, Ron, we'll be leaving first. Take care of yourself. Okay. Ron nodded. Be careful. Montegot said. Those two from the sacred domain have powerful auras. They seem to be quite powerful, but I believe you can deal with them in a one-on-one situation. At this moment, Hill sighed and said, Ron, I suggest that you reconsider it. As a former teammate, Ron, I have to advise you that this is not a wise decision. Hill said seriously before they left. However, Hill's words could not shake Ron's determination. He smiled at Hill and said, I know what I'm doing. After saying that, he politely bid farewell to everyone. Seeing that they could not persuade Ron, Hill and Spark looked at each other silently and took a deep breath in unison. Pratt, Montegot, Hill, Moore, Dora, and Mill returned to the continent of Noah, while the dwarf warrior Hill and the musketeer Spark returned to their dwarf village. After sending everyone off, the sky was already dark. At this time, Shea had taken off her noble and elegant clothes and put on the undead's white-bone battle robe, returning to the image of an extremely cold Death Knight. She said calmly, Ron, when do you plan to make your move? Anytime, Ron grinned, revealing a row of white teeth in the darkness. His smile was faintly sinister. Chapter 617. What do we do now? After Pratt and the rest left, Shea asked. Ron thought for a while. Let's lie in ambush and wait for an opportunity to strike. It was already late at night. The originally bustling streets gradually became deserted. From time to time, 2 or 3 pedestrians would pass by. By the side of the road, there would always be people staggering and then falling to the ground with a plop. These drunkards would usually sleep until the next morning before waking up. In front of the restaurant where Ron was having his meal, a crow fluttered and stopped in front of the door. Its vigilant eyes kept looking around. Ron and Shea were lying in ambush at a dark corner of the street. The shadow of the magic lamp was just enough to hide their figures. "Why do you have to save this girl? Is there a reason?" Shea asked puzzledly. "I don't know either." Ron shook his head. "I don't know why, but I keep feeling an inexplicable sense of familiarity from this girl." "Don't tell me you've taken a fancy to this girl," Shea said with a smile that was not a smile. "Please, am I such a person?" Ron mumbled unhappily. "This is the Schwellon continent." "Hee hee." Shea smiled and brushed the snow-white hair by her ear. "Speaking of which, this girl is quite pretty. It's a pity she's not human. I wonder what she is." Chapter? What race? The two of them were very close to each other. Ron only felt a warm breath blowing on his head. His heart swayed, and he reached out his hand and gently embraced Shea's soft waist. Shea blushed and said softly, "Stop fooling around." Ron did not care. He hugged Shea even tighter, and his hand gently moved around her waist. Shea blushed even more, but she still did not pull Ron's hand away. Instead, she gritted her teeth and endured with a red face. Ron smiled. He had already grasped Shea's pulse. Although the revived Shea had a cold face, her heart was still as hot as fire. "Why haven't they come out yet? Don't tell me he's already gone." After a long time, Shea said faintly, Ron was shocked, and he quickly withdrew his hand that was constantly moving. "It can't be right." Shea laughed in her heart. She said that on purpose. Ron's hand became more and more restless, and it actually moved down bit by bit. "This won't do. I have to send a specter in to take a look." Ron muttered to himself. At this moment, he made a grabbing motion in his hand, and a smoke-like object quickly condensed. "No need. They seem to have come out." Shea stopped him and said in a low voice. Ron raised his head in surprise and saw the Nagasiren clansmen walking out of the hotel with their hands on their shoulders. They were holding each other's shoulders and swaying as if they had drunk a lot. Except for the 2 strong people from the sacred domain, most of the others were sober. In the crowd, Ron saw the poor necromancer girl, who was held in the middle like a prisoner. At this time, a Nagasiren brought 3 carriages. The carriages were very wide, more than enough for a few people to sit in. However, the horses looked quite strange. They had horns on their foreheads and fins on their backs. They looked like fish. The necromancer girl was taken to one of the carriages by the Nagasirens. "These guys have been drinking for so long." Shea frowned and asked softly, "Should we do it now?" "No, now is not the time." Ron shook his head. "Let's keep up first, and then wait for the right time. There are too many people here. It's easy to be exposed if we fight. This is not the Noah continent. We don't know the consequences of being exposed." Ron learned from Hill that the Nagasirens were very powerful. He couldn't take the risk. Even if it wasn't 100% safe, he had to be foolproof. Natural disaster. He had to choose a suitable time and place before he could make his move. In Ron's heart, he had already regarded these Nagasirens as dead people. As long as he found the opportunity, he was determined not to leave any of them alive. At this time, all the Nagasirens got on the carriages. The strange horses stretched out their limbs, and the 3 carriages followed one another. At this time, the crow in the sky moved. It flapped its wings quickly and pierced into the clouds like a sharp arrow. Ding-ling-ling, ding-ling-ling. In the quiet night, the horses' bells were particularly harsh. The 3 carriages were running briskly on the quiet Bluestone Road, the secluded forest trail. This was the main road that connected Dikari City and another big city. It led straight to the sea. This place was secluded and unusually quiet. The trees rustled as the wind blew through them. On both sides of the secluded forest path were smooth cliffs with jagged rocks of strange shapes. It was as if monsters were charging at them, adding to the eeriness of the night. The carriage pulled by the strange horse passed through the secluded forest. It did not slow down at all and directly crashed into the path. The iron wheels were full of gravel, making a bumpy sound. Stop! After Cataclysm had been running for a while, a sound came from the leading carriage. The running horses slowly came to a stop, and the second and third carriages behind them also stopped. At this time, the door of the first carriage opened, and a strange man came out. He was one of the two sacred domain powerhouses of the Naga Sirens. The Naga Sirens of the sacred domain got out of the carriage. A pair of fish-like, bulging eyes scanned the surroundings vigilantly, and a serious look appeared on his face. Stufoshik, what's wrong? At this time, the door of the second carriage opened, and a thin figure slowly got out of the carriage. She was the other sacred domain powerhouse of the Naga Sirens. Her voice sounded like a woman. "O Kenmel," the man named Stufoshik said. "I don't know why, but since we came out of the hotel, I have a feeling of uneasiness. It's like we have been targeted." "Really? Why didn't I feel it?" The woman named O Kenmel frowned and then smiled. "Stufoshik, aren't you being too sensitive? As long as you are a sacred domain powerhouse of the Snow Orchid continent, who doesn't know that this amphibious carriage is the symbol of our sirens? If they dare to have ideas about us." O Kenmel smiled slightly. "Just wait for your country to be destroyed." O Kenmel is right. All the forces in the Snow Orchid continent are afraid of the Naga Sirens. The Sirens have the most powerful amphibious navy in the Snow Orchid continent, and they can land at any point along the coastline. However, many countries in the Snow Orchid continent have long coastlines, so they are naturally controlled by the Sirens. Some small countries were directly annihilated by the Oceanic Race's army. Stufoshik glanced around and did not find anything unusual. He slowly nodded. "You are right. Maybe I'm thinking too much." He also agreed with O'Kimmel's statement. As the overlord of the Snow Orchid continent, their people were treated well wherever they went. No one dared to have ideas about the Sirens. "What about the girl? Is she okay?" Stufoshik's eyes swept across O'Kimmel's carriage as if he wanted to see through the carriage. O'Kemmel smiled. "She is fine. She is sleeping soundly." "Yes." Stufoshik nodded expressionlessly. "She is the person the princess wants. We must make sure nothing goes wrong." O'Kemmel chuckled. "This little girl is indeed cunning. It is impossible to guard against her. Unfortunately, she is too weak. It will not be easy for her to escape from my hands." "Let's go," O'Kemmel said. "Let's hurry to Yunza Sea Alley and then go to our capital, Gatalamandin." "Okay." Stufoshik nodded. "Indeed, we have wasted too much time eating just now." As he spoke, he opened the car door and stepped in. At this time, his footsteps stopped. Through the corner of his eye, he saw a black figure. The figure stood on a protruding rock, his black robe fluttering in the wind. He held a staff in one hand and a white spear-like object in the other. It flashed with a strange, cold light in the darkness. Suddenly, Stufoshik felt a strong sense of danger. "Be careful!" Stufoshik shouted and suddenly retreated. Boom! An explosion exploded on the first carriage, and the whole carriage was blown apart. The two seahorses died on the spot. Even the Naga Siren, who was driving the carriage, was blown away. Sacred Domain Powerhouse. Chapter 618. Ron stood on one side of the cliff, holding the dragon bone staff in one hand and the white bone spear in the other. His expression was cold. "Who are you? How dare you attack the sea folk? Are you tired of living?" Okmar shouted. Her eyes were filled with killing intent. Ron did not reply. He smiled coldly and waved his right hand. A powerful aura suddenly appeared, bringing with it a strong gust of wind. "Be careful! Get out of the way!" Stophawk shouted. "Get down! Get down!" Okmar lowered her head, and the white light brushed past her ear. She felt a burning sensation on her ear, and when she turned around, she saw a spear that was shining coldly in the darkness. Not good. Okmar's face turned pale. She finally knew what the enemy was going to do. Boom! A loud sound rang out. The third carriage exploded with a huge sound, and the carriage was blown to pieces again. At the same time, it was set ablaze. Ron's target wasn't Oakenmeyer, but the third carriage. The Sifo convoy was stunned by the sudden attack. They panicked. Roar! A long howl came from all around. It was like a painful wail from hell, echoing in the valley. At this time, a tall figure jumped down from the steep mountain wall. It was a huge skeleton. It was covered in heavy armor and held a shield and a long sword in its hands, constantly howling. The skeletons followed one after another. There were hundreds and thousands of them. They jumped down from the cliff and surrounded the three carriages. Not good. We've fallen into an ambush. Oakmer shouted. Stophos clenched his teeth. It's a powerful being from the sacred domain. We're in trouble. Stophos was a powerful being from the sacred domain. He was not worried about trouble, but he knew that he had a more important mission to complete. They're undead. They're undead creatures. Oakmer recognized the skeleton warriors at a glance. Stophos said, could it be that the girl's accomplice came to save her? Oakmer said, but when I caught her, I didn't find any accomplices. Be careful, they're coming. Stophos shouted. At this time, countless skeleton warriors charged at the three carriages. Some merfolk warriors also came back to their senses and drew their weapons to fight with the skeleton warriors. The scene was extremely chaotic. In the darkness, some sea race warriors who were caught off guard were hacked to death by the skeleton brave. Blood, flames, and sword light interweaved together to form a symphony of death. Roar! Seeing the brave sea tribe warrior lying in a pool of blood, Stophos was finally enraged. He hissed and opened his snake-like mouth to reveal his white teeth. At this time, Stophos's body suddenly changed. Kacha! Kacha! His body suddenly grew several times larger, and his silk clothes burst open. A powerful aura was instantly released, and the surrounding space was filled with bloody and depraved power. What? Ron was stunned. He saw that the Naga's sacred domain powerhouse in front of the first carriage had completely changed. His whole body grew 3 times larger, and he became a 3-meter-tall giant with 4 long horns on his head. His body was covered with scales, and his legs below his waist were completely gone. Instead, they were replaced by a long tail. What kind of monster is this? Ron said to himself. Is this the true body of the Naga sea race? That's right. Stophos had completely transformed into a Naga siren. With a low roar, his hand flashed, and a 2-meter-long long sword appeared in his hand. He waved it at the skeleton hero that was rushing towards him. Swoosh! A bright light flashed, and the skeleton brave was split into 2 halves from head to toe. With just one slash, the armor turned into a cloud of black smoke and disappeared. Stophos, who had transformed into a Naga sea race warrior, was almost invincible. The skeleton brave was like a piece of paper in front of him. His huge body knocked a few skeleton brave away, and with a sweep of his long tail, a few skeleton brave fell apart. Stophos rampaged, and his huge body kept moving in the field. Soon, the skeletons were either dead or injured, and half of them were gone. Oakenmeyer immediately stepped forward to help, but he was stopped by Stophos. You take the girl and rush out immediately. I'll hold him back. Stophos shouted. He stared coldly at Ron with his snake-like eyes. He knew that it was useless to tangle with these skeletons. The only way was to kill the summoner. Yes. Oakenmeyer also knew the seriousness of the matter. No matter what happened, completing the task entrusted by the princess was the most important thing. Oakenmeyer gritted his teeth and jumped onto the second carriage. Because the necromancer girl was sitting in the carriage, Ron didn't attack it. This further confirmed Oakenmeyer's guess that Ron must have come for the girl. The coachman of the second carriage was already dead. He was killed by Ron. Oakenmeyer kicked his body away, grabbed the reins of the seahorse, and rushed out like a wisp of smoke. Boom! The 2 seahorses charged forward with great momentum and knocked away the skeletons in front of them. They opened up a bloody path and quickly ran out of the secluded forest. Ron didn't chase after them. Instead, he calmly watched the carriage go away. At this time, his eyes fell on the Naga sea race warrior in front of him. It was a huge monster that emitted a biting cold aura. It was like a dangerous wild beast, causing people to feel intimidated just by looking at it. Who sent you? Stophos stared at Ron and asked in a deep voice. Ron didn't answer. Aren't you going to answer? Stophos grinned. looking even more ferocious in the dark night. It doesn't matter if you say it or not, because from tonight onwards, you will die. Ron still didn't respond. He looked at Stophos as if he was looking at a dead man. Damn undead. Stophos was finally angry. He roared, curled his long tail, and jumped up like a spring. He raised the long sword in his hand and slashed at Ron fiercely. The powerful momentum was like a mountain. Before the person arrived, the power had already blown a gust of wind. Ron didn't move. At this time, the corner of his mouth revealed a sneer. Boom! With a loud bang, a powerful force spread out in an instant. Ron finally collided with the Naga tribe's powerhouse. Faster, faster. Oakenmeyer drove the carriage and sped along the secluded forest path. The iron wheels of the carriage made a crisp sound on the cobblestone path. As Oakenmeyer was running, her eyes suddenly opened wide. She saw a knight suddenly appear in front of her. It was a very beautiful woman. She wore thick armor and rode a black horse. Her hooves were burning with flames, and her long white hair fluttered in the wind. The female knight was looking at her coldly, her eyes as sharp as a sword. Not good. He has an accomplice. Oakenmeyer screamed in her heart. She suddenly tightened the horse's head, but it was too late. The female knight had already raised her sword high. Chapter 619. Wave Slash. The huge figure swooped down, and a gust of wind blew on the ground. Although the Nagas were huge, they were like flexible fish in the air. Facing the attacking Naga warriors, Ron took a step back unhurriedly. He raised the dragon bone staff high, and as the black mist condensed, a huge white bone shield appeared in front of him. The white bone shield floated quietly in the air like a guardian. Boom! A ray of light suddenly exploded, pressing down like a mountain. A powerful force shook the surroundings, and the place where Ron was standing was suppressed by the powerful force from above. It shattered with a loud bang, bringing with it a large amount of smoke. Wave Breaking Slash was one of the unique combat skills of the Naga tribe. The so-called Wave Breaking Slash was a combat skill with an indomitable momentum. It was the most suitable combination with the huge body of the Naga tribe. Although the Naga tribe was a marine race, their aerial combat was not weak at all. Huh, where is he? When the smoke dissipated, Stophos looked around and found that Ron was nowhere to be seen. He was shocked. So fast. Stophos was surprised. He didn't even see how Ron disappeared. However, he saw an incredible scene in the next moment. Ron's figure suddenly appeared beside a Naga warrior, and the bone spear in his hand stabbed out. Poochie. A long bone spear pierced through the head of a Naga warrior. Blood spurted out from the Naga warrior's body like a fountain. The Naga warrior desperately opened his eyes wide. Ugly. Chapter, the ugly body fell down with a loud bang. Ron looked back and smiled coldly at Stophos. Bastard. Stophos was completely enraged. He roared and slashed down with his sword. Those skeletons seemed to have received an order as they rushed towards him in unison. Stophos snorted and spread the long sword in his hand. Dozens of skeleton warriors were separated. These things are useless to me. The skeleton warriors were indeed not Stophos' opponent, but there were many of them. They were like a wall, blocking Stophos' path. While Stophos was entangled with the skeletons, another Naga warrior fell into a pool of blood. Most of the Naga warriors were only at the master level. When they met Ron, a sacred domain powerhouse, they were all killed in seconds. Ron was determined to make a move, so he didn't intend to leave anyone alive. He wanted to eliminate these weak fellows first. One another, after a while, all the Naga warriors fell into a pool of blood. The forest path was full of corpses. They had all changed into Naga warriors, but they were not Ron's opponents. After Ron killed the last Naga, he wiped the blood off the bone spear as if nothing had happened. It was as if he had done something insignificant. There was no expression on his face as he said indifferently, "Now it's your turn." Stophos' pupil shrank. The little necromancer in front of him killed all the Naga warriors in front of him. He simply did not put him in his eyes. Although he did not care about the lives of these Naga warriors, Stophos was still angry. But when he faced the little necromancer, he could not help but feel fear from the bottom of his heart. Stofosik was so angry that he laughed. Good, very good. How dare you? Since the rise of our Naga race to dominate this continent, no one has dared to challenge our authority for a long time. He waved the long sword in his hand and pointed at Ron. Boy, if you have the guts, tell me your name. I will let you die knowing. No need. Ron stared at him as if he was staring at prey and said coldly, I don't need to tell the name of a person who is about to die because it is meaningless. Go to hell. Stoffisk roared and twisted his body like a fish. His huge body rushed over, stirring up a gust of wind wherever he went. Wave-breaking slash. Stofosik raised a long sword in his hand and pressed it down on Ron with the posture of Mount Tai. Haze. Ron's body turned into a cloud of black mist and disappeared. Boom! The gravel exploded, and a large hole appeared where Stofosik's wave-breaking slash had attacked. At this time, Ron rushed into the sky at an extremely fast speed. Don't even think about escaping. Ron's dodge was called Cataclysm. Don't leave anyone alive. Stoffisk took it as a sign of weakness. With a loud shout, he retracted his long tail and jumped up like a spring, following Ron into the air. Boom, boom, boom. The two powerful forces constantly intertwined and collided in the air, erupting into beautiful sparks. The trees within 100 miles were swept up and thrown into the air, torn into powder by the powerful forces. The power that seeped out from the air was suffocating. Following an extremely bright flash of light, the two figures finally separated not long after. Ron still looked calm, but his clothes were slightly damaged. In sharp contrast, Stofosik was dispirited. Huff, huff, huff. Stofosik gasped for breath. His body was already covered in wounds, and his outer armor was stained with blood. He stared at Ron with a pair of blood-red eyes, and there was a trace of confusion on his ugly and ferocious face. Do you feel that your strength is decreasing rapidly in the battle? Ron said calmly. It's simple, because you are cursed by me. Curse. Stofosik's body trembled. He felt that his strength was rapidly flowing away like sand in an hourglass. The more intense the battle, the faster the loss of strength. At this moment, Stofosik finally felt fear. He knew that in his current state, it was impossible to defeat this small necromancer in front of him. Stofosik gritted his teeth and fled without looking back. Cataclysm. Haha, do you think you can escape? Ron smiled, but he was not anxious at all. At this time, Stofosik, who was fleeing, felt a huge shadow appear, covering the moonlight in the sky and turning the earth pitch black. What's this? Stofosik was stunned. The next moment, his expression froze. He saw a huge bone dragon appear in front of him, blocking his path. Then, it opened its bloody mouth and spat out a corrosive dragon breath. Boom! Stofosik did not have time to react and was hit by the dragon breath. He screamed and his huge body fell from the sky. Large amounts of green smoke came out of Stofosik's body. The dragon breath from the bone dragon was still corroding his body. He struggled to get up. He looked up and saw that the small necromancer was already standing in front of him, coldly staring at him with a pair of emotionless eyes. Ron said expressionlessly. At this moment, he summoned a white bone spear with a swoosh, held it in his hand, and slowly approached Stofosik. Don't come over. Stofosik's eyes were filled with fear. At this time, he finally saw Ron's appearance with the help of the weak moonlight. You are a human? Stofosik was shocked. It would be fine if it was another powerful race, but he did not expect it to be a human who attacked him. Aren't humans one of the weakest races in the snow orchid continent? When did they have the guts to attack the Aquarius? Are they not afraid of being exterminated? Stofosik's eyes widened. He could not understand. A weak race like humans would not have a grudge against the Aquarius because they were not worthy. Yes, you could die now, Ron said coldly. He raised the bone spear and stabbed at the Naga powerhouse who had fallen to the ground. Bang! Ron's spear pierced through Stofosik's heart. You! Stofosik's eyes stared at Ron. At death's door, he laughed. Aha! Human. You're actually a human. I can't believe that I, the powerful Stofosik, would die in the hands of a human. Ha ha! How ironic, but you won't be able to escape. Today you killed me. You've already decided your death, not to mention your human country, Even the entire human race won't be able to escape the fate of destruction. Our sea race will never let you go, never. Stofosik's eyes were filled with extreme hatred. His body twisted a few times in pain, and then he died. Is that so? Ron pulled the bone spear out of the Naga powerhouse's body and said lightly, "What you Aquarius do to humans has nothing to do with me. Also, I forgot to tell you that I am not a human of this continent," Ron said, and then turned around. At this time, he was slightly stunned and stared at one of the corpses of the Aquarius powerhouse. He actually pretended to be dead to escape this disaster. If I hadn't used soul detection, I would have been fooled by him, Ron said to himself. He smiled and walked over slowly. As Ron's footsteps approached, the corpse suddenly moved and turned over. Don't kill me, Sir Human. I don't know anything." The Aquarius powerhouse's face was filled with horror as he said in a trembling voice, "I don't want to kill you either," Ron said indifferently. "It's a pity that you Naga sirens are too powerful. I really don't want to get myself into any trouble. No, believe me, I swear in the name of the sea god. I promise I won't tell anyone." The surviving Naga siren's powerhouse desperately waved his hand, his huge body trembling. With a bang, the bone spear in Ron's hand pierced out mercilessly. The Aquarius powerhouse's eyes widened, and he twisted a few times before he stopped moving. "Compared to your oath, I'd rather believe in a dead person because a dead person will never speak," Ron said lightly. Ron scanned his surroundings, and after confirming that no one was left alive, he nodded and put the dragon bone staff back into his interspatial bag. Ron knew that the Naga sirens were extremely powerful. This was also the reason why he wanted to kill them all. He had to deal with this problem very carefully and not leave any clues. Chapter 620. At this time, Ron's eyes fell on the weapon beside Stofos. He took it and saw that it was a sacred tool. "My luck is not bad. This should be able to sell for some black crystal coins, right?" Ron naturally laughed at the sacred tool and stuffed it into his space bag. But strangely, other than the sacred tool, the Naga powerhouse did not have anything else on him. Ron frowned. Strange. Could it be that the Naga siren powerhouses don't bring anything other than weapons when they go out? Forget it. Cleaning up the scene is more important. Ron shook his head and flicked his finger. A black spark fell on Stofos' body. After a while, Stofos' body made a sizzling sound and emitted a lot of white smoke. After a while, the huge body was completely corroded and turned into a pool of black water. After a few hours, the pool of black water would completely disappear without leaving a trace. Done. Ron smiled with satisfaction and was about to leave. At this time, a trace of reflection on the ground attracted his attention. Ron was stunned for a moment. He picked up the small thing on the ground and looked at it. It was a strange-looking ring. "Chapter, what is this?" Ron looked at it over and over again, but he couldn't see anything. He tried to explore it with his soul sense. Then he was surprised. This is the legendary space ring. Ron explored it with his soul sense. The space of this space ring was huge. Whether it was weapons, equipment, or healing potions, it had everything. Ron also saw some marinated fish, which seemed to be the food of these Naga powerhouses. This space ring is good stuff. Ron played with the small space ring. The space inside the space ring was even larger than his space bag. He accepted it with a smile and put it on his finger. Ron began to seize the time to destroy the other corpses, but unfortunately, except for the Sacred Domain powerhouse, Ron did not find any other space rings. It seemed that space rings were not common in Snow Orchid Continent. After doing all this, Ron stood up. At this time, he heard familiar, heavy footsteps. Shea had returned. "Is it done?" Ron smiled and turned around. "What about the girl? Are you talking about her?" Shea said lightly. She stretched out her hand and pushed a small figure in front of Ron. "Ouch, you hurt me." The small black figure made a crisp voice, as pleasant as an oriole. It was very comfortable to listen to. It was a very delicate and pretty little girl. She was dressed in a necromancer's attire. A long black robe wrapped around her thin body. At this moment, she was constantly rubbing her aching forehead and gritting her teeth. The girl raised her head. In her watery eyes, there were tears of grievance. She looked very pitiful. She had 2 small braids and her face was a strange blue color. She looked abnormally pale. From her appearance, she was not human. Her strength was not strong. Of course, that was compared to Ron and Shea. The girl's strength was about the level of a grand magus necromancer. She was far from the sacred domain. It was no wonder that she was captured by the Sea Tribe and had no choice but to ask Ron for help. Ron looked at the girl and then at Shea's face. He asked, "Where's that person?" He was asking about the Nagas sacred domain powerhouse who drove the carriage out of the secluded forest. Natural disaster. Chapter 620, Sacred Domanical. Kill her. Shea said straightforwardly. That guy was very strong. If not for the fact that I had to protect the girl in the carriage, I would not have killed her so easily. Very good. Ron smiled and nodded slightly. He looked at the girl. This girl, with only the strength of a Grand Magus, was actually protected by 2 powerhouses of the sacred domain. It seemed that her identity was not simple. He just did not know why she suddenly asked him for help. However, Ron did not want to know the process of the matter. He was not interested in knowing. He said slowly, "Since the matter has been resolved, let's go." "Okay." Shea nodded, glanced at the girl, and then followed her. When the girl saw the 2 leave, she became anxious and shouted, "Hey, dude, why are you leaving so soon?" Ron stood still, turned around to look at her, and said indifferently, "I think you're safe now, and we still have things to do. Goodbye." After saying that, he turned and left. Hey, wait for me." Seeing that the 2 of them were about to leave, the girl anxiously called out. Her voice was as clear and melodious as an oriole's. She quickly chased after them. "Hey, why are you guys walking away from each other? What else do you want?" Ron frowned, stood still again, and asked calmly, "If you weren't a necromancer and didn't ask me for help with the note, I wouldn't have bothered to save you. Now that you're safe, what else do you want?" "Necromancer." When the girl heard this, she was stunned for a moment. Then she smiled happily. "Hee, big brother, you are mistaken. I'm not a necromancer. I am a necromancer." "Necromancer?" This time it was Ron and Shea's turn to be stunned. They looked carefully, and sure enough, the black robe the girl was wearing was very similar to a necromancer's. However, it was clearly different. Her robe was divided into 2 parts. The upper part was like a tuxedo, revealing a white flowery collar. The lower part was a long skirt that wrapped up to her ankles, perfectly showing off her petite figure. The girl was holding a long staff in her hand. The long staff was suffused with a trace of green and white light. It seemed to be a very expensive sacred weapon. "So this is a necromancer." Ron carefully looked at the girl in front of him and nodded inwardly. He and Shea had never seen a necromancer before, so it is normal that you can't recognize her. Legend has it that necromancers can heal injured undead creatures and can also make them stronger. He wondered if the girl in front of him had this ability. I don't know how to address this necromancer Grand Magus and this Death Knight's sister. What surprised Ron was that the necromancer girl was very friendly. She smiled and took the initiative to greet them, closing the distance between them in an instant. Ron and Shea very naturally reported their names. "I am Nicole, necromancer Grand Necromancer Nicole." The necromancer named Nicole smiled and said, "I am very happy to meet you. Thank you for saving me." Ron didn't like this little girl who was very friendly. Perhaps it was because it was his first time here and he didn't feel at ease with strangers in the Snow Orchid continent. "Miss Nicole, we are very happy to meet you." Ron smiled, which could be considered as a greeting. He immediately restrained his smile. "But if there is nothing else, we will be leaving." "Ah, you are leaving." When Nicole heard this, she couldn't hide the disappointment in her eyes. "Where are you going?" Ron thought for a moment and said, "There is no harm in telling you. We will be leaving this continent soon." He added, "We are not from this plane." "Is that so?" When Nicole heard this, she was dumbfounded. When she heard that the 2 of them were leaving, some of the plans in her heart completely fell through. Necromancer Grand Necromancer. Nicole hesitated for a moment and raised her head. A pair of big watery eyes looked pitifully at Ron. She bit her lips. I want to ask you for a favor. I don't know if it's possible. Say it. Ron said calmly. If I can help, then there is no problem. If I can't, then I can only say sorry. When Nicole heard this, a glimmer of hope appeared on her face. She smiled and said, "It is like this. I want you to help me find someone." Find someone? Ron and Shea looked at each other strangely. They didn't think that this little girl would actually want them to help her find someone. Chapter 6:21. Read_content_up. I don't know. Nicole shook her head. I only know that he is in the snow orchid continent. Ron and Shea did not know whether to laugh or cry. She only knew that he was in the snow orchid continent, and she wanted them to find him. They were not from the snow orchid continent and were not familiar with the place. Besides, the snow orchid continent was so big and they did not know where he was. How could they find him? I'm sorry. We really can't help you with this. Shea immediately refused. Nicole was anxious. Hearing this, Nicole became anxious. She grabbed Shea's hand and pitifully said, Sister Death Knight, are you really not willing to help? I must find him. Shea shook her head and sighed. Miss Nicole, it's not that we don't want to help, but we can't help at all. We are humans from another plane and are not familiar with the snow orchid continent. Perhaps you should find a familiar guide. Although I don't know where he is, I know that he has probably appeared in that place. As long as you take me there, Nicole said. Nicole said with a sobbing tone, Sister Shea, I beg you. I've always wanted to find that person. Looking at Nicole's pitiful appearance, Shea could not help but feel a trace of sympathy. She turned to look at Ron. Ron thought for a moment and asked in a probing tone, Miss Nicole, since you know that place, why can't you go yourself? Must you drag us along? It's not that I can't go, but Nicole was a little embarrassed. She looked at the two of them, mustered up her courage, and said hesitantly, Actually, I'm also from another plane. I came here to find him, but as soon as I arrived in the snow orchid continent, the people of the Nagasee clan got the news from somewhere and directly sent people to capture me, until I met you guys. So Nicole's voice lowered. She paused, lowered her head, and secretly looked at the two of them. Hearing this, Ron basically understood. It turned out that this little girl's purpose was to have the two of them be her hired thugs, protecting her all the way to the place she mentioned. This was originally a small matter, but once it involved the Nagasee clan, it wasn't a small matter. Judging from the attitude of the Nagasee clan experts towards Nicole, it was clear that Nicole's existence was very important to them. Agreeing to Nicole's request meant that the Nagasee clan experts would cause trouble for them. To Ron, such a choice was extremely unwise. In the snow orchid continent, which was much larger than the Noah continent, the Nagasee tribe could be regarded as an overlord race. Presumably, there were many strong people in the Nagasee tribe. Thinking of fighting against such a powerful race, Ron felt his scalp tingle. He was only a small necromancer, sacred magus. In the snow orchid continent, where the powerhouses of the sacred domain ran rampant, his existence was nothing. It wasn't that Nicole didn't think of asking others for help. After she was caught by the Nagasee tribe, she used a trick to sneak away. Then, she spent a lot of money to find a powerhouse of the sacred domain and asked for his protection. The powerhouse of the sacred domain agreed at first, but when the Nagasee tribe experts came to find him, he was so scared that his legs went soft. He immediately knelt down and kowtowed again and again. The dignity and arrogance of a powerhouse of the sacred domain were all thrown out of the sky. He obediently offered Nicole with both hands, not even daring to fart. At this point, Nicole knew how powerful the Nagasee tribe was in the snow orchid continent. At that time, she was completely desperate until she met Ron, a powerful necromancer, sacred magus. This was also the only necromancer of the sacred domain that she had met in the snow orchid continent. Nicole had an idea and decided to give it a try. While she was in the toilet, she secretly slipped a note into Ron's hand. At that time, Ron didn't make a move, which made Nicole a little disappointed. But tonight, the bloody massacre in the secluded forest rekindled hope in Nicole's heart. These two people were powerful and ruthless. They were the ideal bodyguard candidates. The hope of finding people in the snow orchid continent fell on them. In this way, Nicole had an idea about Ron. Sorry, we can't help you with this. Miss Nicole, I think you should find someone else. Ron thought about it again and again, but still refused. What a joke. The girl in front of him was the person that the Naga tribe was looking for. If he went up to her, wouldn't he be courting death? Shea, let's go. Ron said to Shea. Shea looked at Nicole sympathetically and moved her lips. She wanted to say something, but in the end, she didn't say anything. She sighed and silently left behind Ron. Hey. You guys, seeing that the two were really going to leave, Nicole was so anxious that tears came down. Without the protection of the sacred domain experts, even without the Naga tribe, it would be difficult for her to move an inch with only the strength of a master. She might be dead on the street tomorrow. I won't ask you to help me for free. I'll give you money. Seeing that begging was useless, Nicole immediately tempted them with money. She said loudly, I'll give you money, a lot of money. Ron's footsteps didn't stop. He pretended that he didn't hear Nicole's words. What a joke. No amount of money was more important than their lives. Seeing that Ron and the others were still going to leave, Nicole stomped her feet anxiously and said a number that shocked them. 500 black crystal coins. Boom! It was as if thunder had exploded in their minds. Ron and Shea suddenly stopped, their faces full of extreme astonishment. 500 black crystal coins. What kind of concept was that? It must be known that Platz's team worked themselves to death in the Moon Lake, and each of them only earned a few black crystal coins. Even Ron, who earned the most, only earned 18 black crystal coins. These 500 black crystal coins, to them, and even to the entire Noah continent, was an astronomical figure. Ron and Shea looked at each other. Both of them could see the astonishment on each other's faces. 500 black crystal coins. 500 black crystal coins. This wealth was something that they might not be able to earn in their lifetime. Seeing that the two of them were somewhat tempted, Nicole was delighted. She rolled her eyes and set an even more tempting price. 800 black crystal coins. 800 black crystal coins. She increased the price by 300 black crystal coins in one bid. Who was this girl? Did she really have so many black crystal coins? At this moment, Ron and Shea could no longer maintain their calm demeanor. They turned around and walked back. Ron said with a cold face, Miss Nicole, do you really have that many black crystal coins? After bidding this price, Nicole felt deep regret. She understood the principle of not showing off one's wealth. It was only then that she recalled that the two before her were experts of the sacred domain. If they intended to kill and rob her, she wouldn't have the slightest ability to resist. However, Nicole quickly calmed down. She looked at the crowd with her round eyes and said with a smile, Hee, isn't it just 800 black crystal coins? I believe I can still take out such a small amount of money. If I can find that person, I will triple no. Even 5 times the black crystal coins won't be a problem. 5 times, that would be 4,000 black crystal coins. That was already an astronomical amount of wealth. Ron didn't even dare to think about it. These were black crystal coins, not cabbages. Nicole paused for a moment and calmly said, However, I don't have that many black crystal coins on me. I will give you the money after you complete the mission. Nicole was very smart. She knew that she could use a higher price to tempt them. If they completed the mission, they would receive 4,000 black crystal coins. If they wanted to kill her and rob her, they would only receive 800 black crystal coins. Between 800 and 4,000 black crystal coins, many people would wisely choose the latter. Ron pondered for a moment before he looked at Nicole and asked, Miss Nicole, what I want to know is, who are you? Why do you have so many black crystal coins? Nicole smiled. At this moment, she finally realized that she had the upper hand. The two were tempted by the huge amount of black crystal coins. Nicole's identity was special. She naturally could take out 4,000 black crystal coins. However, she couldn't reveal her identity right now. Sorry, I can't tell you my identity. Nicole shook her head and said straightforwardly, This is also a mission. The reward is only this much. You can choose whether you want to accept it or not. Okay. Ron was speechless. Then, the second question. Ron thought for a moment and said, "Where's the place you want to go?" "Sorry, I can't tell you this either." Nicole shook her head again. "Unless you agree to accept this mission." To accept or not to accept, this was a problem. If they didn't consider the Naga tribe, this was not a mission at all. In the face of such a huge reward, Ron was suddenly in a dilemma. Shea couldn't help but say, "Miss Nicole, it's not that we don't want to believe you, but can you really take out so many black crystal coins? Or are you just fooling us? 800 black crystal coins is not a small amount." Nicole was relieved to hear Shea's words. If they could ask such a question, it proved that they were not people who would kill and rob. "You want to prove it? No problem." Nicole breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. With a flash in her hand, she took out a large pile of black crystal coins and handed them to the two. "Here are 200 black crystal coins. It's part of the reward for you. It can also be regarded as a deposit. After you complete the mission, I will give you the rest." Ron took the black crystal coins and felt the heavy touch in his hand, as well as the power emitted from them. All of this told him that these black crystal coins were not fake. 200 black crystal coins were easily obtained. Ron and Shea looked excited. Their hands trembled slightly as they held the black crystal coins. These were all black crystal coins. If they were exchanged for gold coins on the Noah continent, ordinary people would not be able to spend them in dozens of lifetimes. Seeing Nicole easily take out 200 black crystal coins without batting an eyelid, Ron and Shea finally believed that Nicole was not fooling them. "Shea, what should we do?" In the face of such a huge amount of wealth, Ron couldn't make up his mind. He turned to Shea and asked, "I'll listen to you." Shea said softly. She smiled and said, "As long as you decide to take the next step, I will complete it with you." Saying this, Shea paused. "I have no regrets." Saying this, Shea's eyes flashed with a glimmer of bright light. After thinking about it, Ron still couldn't resist the temptation of such a huge amount of wealth. He was tempted. "Well, I'll take this mission." Ron took a deep breath and nodded. He carefully put the 200 black crystal coins into his space bag and said, "The mission is to escort you to a place on the Noah continent, and then the mission will be completed, right?" "Yes." Nicole's brows relaxed. She thought for a moment and added, "Of course, if I encounter any trouble on the way, you have to help me solve it. This is our duty." "Of course, there is no problem." Ron nodded and agreed. He thought for a moment and said, "Since we know that the Naga clan may come to trouble us, of course, we can't go with great fanfare. Everything has to be done secretly." Ron thought that the Snow Orchid continent was so big and there were so many races. As long as they found a place to hide, even if the Naga clan had great power and great means, it would be impossible for them to overturn the entire continent. Even if Ron couldn't beat those Naga clan experts, it wouldn't be too difficult for him to escape. Thinking of this, Ron decided to take the mission. "I have no objections." Nicole raised her hand and said, "As long as you take us to that place," Shea said. "Well, can you tell us where that place is now?" "The ancient ruins of the Death Impasse." Read_link_up. Chapter 622. Shualon Continent, Gatali Mandan. Gatali Mandan was known as the Sea City. The entire city was built along the sea. Most of the city was immersed in the sea. The houses were strange, tall buildings. In front of each house, there were layers of stairs that slowly revealed themselves with the tide or ebb of the sea. There were no streets in the city. The houses were only connected by bridges. Below the bridges was the blue sea. People came and went in boats, shuttling back and forth in this strange sea world. Of course, to the sea tribe, ships were a little redundant. These amphibious creatures could hold their breath underwater for 2 to 3 hours. However, this was only the treatment of the commoners. Some of the nobles of the sea tribe liked to ride on luxurious and magnificent ships to show off their noble status. This used to be the most remote and barren place in the Shualon continent. But now, it had become the largest metropolis in the Shualon continent. This was the capital of the Sea Clan. In a few hundred years, the Sea Clan had built this place into the center of the world. Legend had it that a few hundred years ago, the Sea Clan was still an extremely inferior race. They were eaten by other races. Because their meat was unusually delicious, the people of the Sea Clan were once the prey of the fishermen of the Shu'alan continent. Just a few hundred years ago, the Sea Clan rose like a meteor. The dazzling light shocked the entire continent. The Sea Clan was also divided into Naga, frogmen, murlocs, turtles, and other races. They united and miraculously established a country. Just as the people of the Shu'alan continent were mocking this country made up of inferior races, the Sea Clan had countless strong people overnight. This shook the entire continent. What was even more frightening was that these strong people of the Sea Clan began to set foot on the land and began their journey of conquest. Chapter. No one could resist the mighty army of the Sea Clan, especially the elusive fleet of the Sea Clan. It was a nightmare for all the land countries. They could seal off the coastline and land at any point. It was impossible to guard against them. In the war between the land races and the sea races, countless strong fighters were killed, and the powerful sea race won the final victory. For the first time, the land races of the Snow Orchid continent lowered their heads to the sea race and wholeheartedly acknowledged the position of the sea race as the overlord. No one hunted the sea tribe anymore, and their delicious meat would no longer be served on people's tables. The once inferior race had suddenly risen to become the strongest race in the Shu'alan continent. However, the sea tribe believed that they could never adapt to the land, so they returned to the sea. They built countless cities by the sea, and Gadalamandan was one of them. In the center of Gadalamandan, there was a huge crystal palace. This palace was made of precious translucent crystal stones, occupying dozens of square kilometers of sea area. The translucent crystal stones reflected the blue sea water and the rising fog, forming a beautiful rainbow in the sky. In the center of a room in the side hall of the Crystal Palace sat a beautiful Naga woman. She had turned into a human-like state. A pair of slender jade feet were crossed at will. Her beautiful face had a delicate taste. Her hair was slightly curled, and a pair of beautiful eyebrows were gently raised. There was an extremely dissatisfied expression on her face. Vitala, the princess of the Nagasea clan, was listening to the report of a guard. In addition to Vitala, there were more than 10 Sea Clan people standing in the hall. From the aura they exuded, there was no doubt that they were strong people of the sacred domain. Beside Princess Vitala stood a proud young man in a purple robe. He was also a strong Naga Sea Clan person. At this moment, he was also listening seriously. What? You said that the girl went missing near Dekari City? How is that possible? After listening, Vitala stood up and lost her composure. Didn't I send Stefasik and Kinmel to bring the girl back? Where are they? Vitala said loudly. Her nervousness showed that this was not a trivial matter. Missing. The fat guard shook his head. I'm sorry, Your Highness. The investigation team received news that Stefasik and Kinmel have been missing near Dekari City for several days. After a preliminary investigation, the investigation team came to the conclusion that they had been attacked. Attacked? As soon as this was said, the entire hall buzzed with excitement. How is that possible? Someone actually attacked the Sea Clan. How dare they? Quickly find out who did it. The experts of the oceanic species whispered in disgust in low voices. Without exception, their faces were filled with anger. It had been a long time since they had heard news of an attack on the Sea Clan. It had been decades since the last attack on the Sea Clan. The rising Sea Clan had a vengeful personality. Every land expert who provoked the Sea Clan did not have a good ending. The merfolk Princess Vitara's body trembled, her white slender hand tightly grasping the corner of the coral chair, trembling slightly. But, catastrophe. Chapter 622, Calamity. The princess is furious, seeing the strong anger in her heart. Who did it? Vitala asked with gritted teeth. Her beautiful face was covered with veins, looking abnormally ferocious. We don't know. The guard shook his head and replied. From the investigation of the scene, the attackers were very professional. Their goal was very clear. They were targeting Stefasik from the start and set up an ambush in a secluded forest not far from Deckery City. There were traces of battle at the scene. They were very cautious and destroyed the corpses after killing our experts. As a result, we couldn't find any corpses at the scene. The first 2 seahorse carriages were destroyed, and 2 kilometers away, we found another seahorse carriage. This means there might be more than one attacker. The guard held the report in his hand and said a lot. He was just reading from the book, and there was not much new information. What about that girl? Princess Vitala didn't care about the life and death of the 2 sacred domain experts. What she really cared about was that girl. That girl was extremely important to her. The girl's body wasn't found at the scene. She was either killed or taken away. The guard tried his best to keep calm because he could see that the princess' expression was getting worse and worse. According to the investigation team's estimation, the possibility of her being taken away is very high. The guard added, "Possibility?" Princess Vitala's eyes were like sharp swords as she stared at the guard and reprimanded, "Don't talk to me about these useless things. Estimate guess. How many days has it been? You spent so much time and found out that these things are meaningless. As the leader of the investigation team, this is what you gave me? Results. I want results. Do you understand? I don't want to hear your excuses," Vitala said loudly. She was in a very bad mood. The guard's forehead was slightly sweaty. He began to look nervous. He took out a small handkerchief and wiped it gently. At this time, the purple-robed young man next to Princess Vitala snorted and took a step forward. "Your Highness, the investigation team is too incompetent." The procedures were impeccable, but the results were not satisfactory. Anyone with a discerning eye can see that someone must have taken the girl away. What's the point of investigation? After investigating for so long, this is the result. If the investigation team's leader is only this capable, then don't occupy that position. The purple-robed young man's words did not give the guard any face at all. Faced with the purple-robed young man's aggressiveness, the guard's fat face turned red. Unfortunately, he had no way to refute. "Fleet, forget it." Vitala waved her hand and said, "The urgent matter isn't who is responsible, but how to find that girl. I admit that I was negligent in this matter. I thought that would be enough to send 2 sanctuary powerhouses, since she's just a little girl with master-level strength. Unfortunately, I didn't expect an accident to happen." Linley sighed. To everyone's surprise, Vitala took the initiative to take responsibility. "Your Highness Princess Vitala, this is not your fault." The purple-robed young man called Fleet comforted her. "Your decision can't be said to be a mistake. It's just an accident. It can happen at any time." Vitala's beautiful eyes flashed again and again, as if she was thinking about something. After a long time, she sighed, "I'm thinking. Who dares to attack our convoy?" Stefoxic and Akimel are both sacred domain powerhouses. In other words, the attacker must be someone above the sacred domain. From the scene of the attack, it must be someone at the peak of the sacred domain. Vitala shook her head. "I've combed through the entire continent's sacred domain powerhouses, but I have no clue. There are many people who can do this, but there's no motive." Fleet's heart skipped a beat, and he said, "Could it be a sacred domain powerhouse from another dimension?" "It's possible." Vitala's beautiful eyebrows knitted together. "If that's the case, it'll be more difficult for us to find him. There are so many powerhouses from another dimension coming to the Shuilon continent every day. How do we know who did it?" Seeing Vitala's expression of deep thought, Fleet's heart ached. He had been in love with Vitala for a long time. As the descendant of a high-level powerhouse of the sea race, there had always been calls to matchmake them. It was just that Vitala's father, the Emperor of the Sea, had never agreed, so it had been put aside until now. Fleet could not help but ask, "Your Highness, that girl is just an undead from another dimension. Do we need to go through so much trouble? Or does that girl have a special identity?" Fleet did not understand why Princess Vitala took this matter so seriously. "You don't understand." Vitala shook her head. "I can't reveal that girl's identity yet, but what I can tell you is that capturing that girl was an order from the higher-ups." "An order from the higher-ups?" When Fleet heard this, his face was full of astonishment. No wonder it was an order from the higher-ups. In that case, everything was logical. If the higher-ups had personally given the order, Not to mention Princess Vitala, even His Majesty, the Emperor of the Sea, would not be able to withstand this pressure. I've decided. At this time, Vitala stood up with a swish. I'm going to find Father now, and through him, invite Lord Holy Priest Gamma to help investigate this matter and capture the girl as soon as possible to give the higher-ups a satisfactory result. Chapter 6:23. Secluded Forest Path during the day. The secluded forest path had lost its usual tranquility. It used to be a deserted place, but it was unusually lively today. A division of the Sea Folk army came ashore from the Cloud Swamp Sea Alley and surrounded the entire path. This division of the Sea Folk army was led by Princess Vitala. There were more than 8,000 of them, and they came ashore in a mighty manner. This frightened the local garrison, and they did not dare to stop them. At the same time, they quickly reported to the kingdom they were in. The entire palace was in chaos, and they thought that the Second Land and Sea War had arrived. Fortunately, this division of the Sea Folk army was not here to start a war. They did not offend anyone along the way and went straight to the secluded forest path. The secluded forest path was bleak and desolate. The trees were tilted left and right, and traces of battle could be seen everywhere. The Sea Folk army stood densely, and the tallest were the Naga warriors. They were 3 meters tall and held long weapons in their hands. They were covered in esoteric scales, and the muscles on their arms bulged. They looked extremely thick and strong, and their lower bodies had long tails. Other than the warriors, there were also Sire magicians. They also had human heads and snake bodies, and they held long magic staffs in their hands. Their bodies were smaller than the warriors. The most numerous were the frogman warriors. These strange marine creatures looked like giant frogs. They stared with round eyes, wore armor unique to the sea folk, and held long swords and shields in their hands. Although they looked funny, their strength was not to be underestimated. These frogmen generally had the strength of a master when they reached adulthood, and a few of them could even reach the master level. They were the most important part of the Sea Folk army. The frogman warriors jumped up the high cliff. Chapter Inside the Cliff, the frogmen looked around with their round eyes, constantly vigilant of the surroundings. Reporting to Your Highness, Stefoxic and O'Kinmel went missing here. A guard came over and reported. Princess Vitala's face was ashen. She gritted her teeth fiercely. How dare they attack my personal guards? Damn it. Beside her, Fritz's eyes flashed. He bowed slightly and said, Your Highness, please calm down. I believe that the murderer will definitely make them pay the price for what they have done. Vitala's face looked better, and he nodded gently. His gaze swept across the surroundings and finally landed on Frit. He asked, Frit, can you see anything? Frit shook his head and said sincerely, I'm sorry, Your Highness, I didn't see anything. Princess Vitala nodded and sighed. Since that's the case, please ask the respected Gamma Master to come out. The door of a luxurious seahorse slowly opened, and a pair of skinny hands slowly stretched out from inside. He gently grabbed the edge of the carriage door frame. An old man from the sea race slowly walked down from the carriage. He was as thin as a bamboo pole, and his old face was full of wrinkles. It was hard to tell how old he was, but he looked like he was about to die. Master Gamma was the only holy priest of the sea tribe. He was already several hundred years old. Although he was known as the Sacred Domain, he did not have any combat power. His ability was in prophecy. Grandmaster Gamma, Gamma's sacred priest. Seeing Gamma walk down from the carriage, Vitala and Frit immediately went up to him. They held Gamma's skinny arms with both hands, and their faces were full of respect. You are Vitala. Master Gamma's eyesight seemed to be very good. He recognized the princess of the sea race at a glance and smiled. Grandmaster Gamma, it's me. Vitala smiled. Gamma's sacred priest had a high status in the sea race. Even Ocean Emperor Poseidon was polite to him, and Vitala was no exception. The last time we met, you were only a girl of about 10 years old. In the blink of an eye, you have grown so old. Gamma said with a smile. His drooping eyelids lifted slightly. What's the matter, my dear Vitala? You asked your father to persuade me to come out. What do you need this old bag of bones to help with? Yes, Grandmaster Gamma. Vitala does need your help. Vitala nodded and said sincerely, my guards once found a little girl. Unfortunately, she was kidnapped. She is right here. Because the kidnapper was a strong man from the sacred domain, he did not leave any traces. Now, I don't know where they are. I have no choice but to ask for Grandmaster Gamma's help. I believe that with Grandmaster Gamma's ability, it will not be difficult to find them. That's a mission given to you by your superiors, right? Before Vitala could finish, Gamma said with a smile. Vitala was shocked. She looked at Frit and said in confusion, Grandmaster Gamma, you know about it? I don't know anything. Gamma shook his head and pointed at his head. I guessed. If it wasn't a mission given to you by your superiors, you wouldn't be in a hurry to ask me to come out. The Cataclysm. Chapter 623. War Gamma's Advice. Vitala bit his lips and said, Yes, Master Gamma, it was indeed the higher-ups who asked me to do it. They told me that this little girl had arrived at the Shualon continent and asked me to find her, control her, and hand her over to them. Gamma raised his eyelids. Didn't you ask why they were looking for this little girl? I did, but they didn't tell me the details. Vitala said, I only know that the little girl has something that the higher-ups want. They ordered me to ask her to hand it over. Gamma was silent. He did not show any support for Princess Vitala, nor did he help her. Vitala's heart sank when she saw Gamma Master's expression. The task from the higher-ups was pressing down on her, but she had no clue about what to do. She was in a difficult position. However, if Gamma Master did not agree to help, Vitala could do nothing. No one in the entire Sea Tribe, including the King of the Sea, dared to disrespect Gamma Master. Master Gamma, please help Vitala. I have already reported the news of finding the little girl. Now, the higher-ups are constantly urging me to hand her over. If I don't hand her over, the higher-ups are pressuring me. The consequences are not something that my father and I can bear. Even the entire Sea Tribe can't bear. Vitala's tone was full of pleading. She had no choice but to ask her father to ask Gamma Master for help. If she had asked Gamma Master herself, she would not even have been able to see him. That's right, Master Gamma. You were able to accurately predict the rise of the Sea Clan hundreds of years ago. I believe that this matter shouldn't be difficult for you. Please help Her Highness with this natural disaster. Frit also tried to persuade Gamma. Gamma said, It's not that I don't want to help, but I don't want you and the Sea Tribe to get too involved in this matter. This involves a battle in another dimension. The consequences of some things are just as serious. Gamma Master sighed after he finished speaking. Fine. Since it is the higher-ups who want to help, I will help you. All these years, without the support of the higher-ups, the Sea Tribe would not be as glorious as it is today. It is not too much to help them with something. Seeing that Gamma had agreed, Vitala and Frit were overjoyed. Vitala said happily, Thank you, Master Gamma. Gamma Master smiled. Actually, when I was talking to you just now, I have already used my ability to find the answer. I also know who kidnapped the little girl. Who is it? Vitala and Fleet asked in unison. Gamma Master shook his head. He took out a crystal ball from under his robe and handed it to Vitala. See for yourself. Vitala took the crystal ball. Through the core of the crystal ball, an image faintly appeared. It was the scene of what happened in the secluded forest that night. She saw her subordinates, Stofos and Okenmel. She saw her convoy being attacked by a dragon. The first and third carriages were attacked and set on fire. Then, Stofos and the other party fought fiercely. Vitala's guess was right. The person who ambushed them had the strength of the sacred domain. The battle between the two parties was not clear. There were only some fragments. Vitala could only see the strong person piercing a spear in a Stofos body. At this time, a face appeared in the crystal ball. It was a very young face with black hair and black eyes. The determined face was filled with a murderous aura. Vitala was shocked. A human? What? Fleet's face was full of shock. Your Royal Highness, what did you say? It was a human who ambushed us? Haha, to think that it was done by the human race. No wonder we couldn't find the culprit even after such a long time. It turns out that it was the human race that we had never thought of and hadn't even listed as a suspect. Flames flickered in Fritz's eyes as his face was filled with malevolence. It seems that some humans are tired of living. Your Royal Highness, we have to teach them a lesson. Otherwise, these lowly people will still have the guts to go against us. Fleet said, teach them a lesson? Vitala sneered. Her eyes were filled with murderous intent. They will all die. At this time, Gamma Master's voice sounded. Vitala, look carefully. That human. What power did he use? What power? Vitala was stunned. Then, she looked at the crystal ball. At this time, she saw clearly. Her eyes suddenly widened. Undead? That's right. Undead. Gamma Master nodded and said, if I'm not wrong, the girl that the higher-ups asked you to find is also an undead. Vitala's breathing became hurried. Gamma Master continued, don't forget, they are all from the main plane. That's why I said that some things, especially the battle between the higher-ups, are inconvenient for us to intervene. Gamma Master's voice became low. Vitala, you have to understand that our sea tribe looks very strong, but that's only in the Shu'Elan continent. In the real main plane, our strength is not ranked at all. Without a doubt, our higher-ups are very strong. However, they are not invincible. They also have enemies. One of these enemies is the undead. Don't intervene in the battle between the higher-ups and the undead. This is my advice to you and also to the Sea Tribe. Chapter 624. Silence. Gamma Master's words caused everyone to fall silent. This time, even Frit did not say anything. That's right. As the most powerful Naga Sea clan in the Shu'Elan continent, they were just a small reptile among the great forces in the main plane. Getting involved in these great forces was courting death. Vitala smiled bitterly. Maybe, but what can we do? She paused slightly, and her eyes instantly regained their clarity. Frit, pass down my order, Vitala said in a deep voice. Immediately draw portraits of these two people and the little girl. Post them in the streets and alleys of the Shu'Elan continent. At the same time, send a copy to all the countries and forces in the Shu'Elan continent. Ask them to help find them. If they are found, we will reward them heavily. Yes, Your Highness, said Fleet in a loud voice. Gamma sighed slightly. This time, the Nagasea clan was completely tied to the chariot of the higher-ups. If the higher-ups failed to fight against the other party, the entire Sea clan would become the target of the enemy's venting. The undead was not to be trifled with. Unfortunately, Master Gamma did not know that Ron's undead was not the same as the undead, he said. This was not a premeditated action, but a last-minute rescue. This is Gatali Mandan. Ron stood on the bridge of a huge building in Gatali Mandan, constantly exclaiming, what a great idea it was to build a city on the sea. The blue sea was connected to the sky, and the square-shaped houses floated on the water, connected by bridges. Under his feet was the blue and clear sea water. If he was lucky, he could see colorful fish swimming around. This is the city of those annoying guys. Facing such a beautiful scene, Nicole did not catch a cold. She frowned, and her face showed disgust. She did not have much affection for the Sea clan who had been holding her hostage. At this moment, the attire of the three people had changed greatly. They could no longer see the attire of the Necromancer, Death Knight, and Necromancer, but three ordinary civilians. They were covered with a large blanket, thick fur on their backs, and hoods on their heads. From head to toe, only a pair of eyes were exposed. It was said that this was the attire of the Maori people in the Shu'Elan continent. They could disguise themselves as Maori people. Hearing Nicole's complaint, Ron smiled bitterly. We have no choice. We have to go to the place, he said. This is the only way. Do you think we want to come to this place? After killing the sacred domain powerhouse of the Sea clan, Ron and the others could only hide themselves and disguise themselves to prevent the Sea clan. Fortunately, as the employer, Nicole had no objections. Nicole's face was a little better. She sniffed gently. In short, I just hate these guys. At this time, Shea asked, by the way, Nicole, why did the Nagasea clan come and catch you? Nicole shrugged. To be honest, I'm not too sure about this. I was caught by them as soon as I came to the Shiwalan continent. It wasn't that she didn't know, but she was very clear that everything the Naga Sirens had done was related to that thing. When she was caught by the Naga Sirens, they also interrogated her about the whereabouts of that thing. Of course, the Naga Sea clan was just cannon fodder. Nicole was very clear that the forces behind the Naga Sea clan really wanted that thing. Ron and Shea looked at each other. From Nicole's face, they could naturally see that she was not telling the truth. However, they did not say anything. Since they had accepted the mission, they would naturally complete it well. Anyway, just send her to that place. Don't worry about her. Ron thought silently. Just as the three of them stood on the bridge and were about to leave, they heard a rude voice. Hey, you guys, come here. Ron, Shea, and Nicole looked over and saw a ferocious fisherman waving his hand not far away, shouting something loudly. It was a dock. The dock was full of ships. Some workers were busy loading the ships. It seemed that they were preparing for a long voyage. You're calling us? Ron pointed at his nose and asked in a strange tone. Yes, it's you guys. Get over here. The fisherman said fiercely. Ron and the other two looked at each other and hesitated. They did not know whether they should go over or not. Let's go and see what he called us for, Shea said with a frown. Ron nodded and walked towards the fisherman with Shea and Nicole. Damn, I asked you guys to come over, and you guys are so slow. The ferocious-looking fisherman grumbled and turned around. He immediately put on a smile and said to another fisherman, Master, I have found them. Should we let them work now? Just find them. Why are you still asking me? The fisherman master looked at Ron and the rest and waved his hand in disgust. Go. Hurry up. We still have to board the ship. Yes, master. The fisherman who looked like a butler bowed deeply. Although he was reprimanded by the master, he still had a smile on his face as he watched the master board the ship. After the master left, the butler glanced at Ron and the other two, and his face returned to its arrogant expression. He snorted coldly and said, What are you guys still standing there for? Move these boxes onto the ship. You're talking about us? Ron opened his eyes wide in shock, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. When did I agree to help you move things? What? When the fisherman's butler heard this, his eyes immediately widened. Ron was even worried that the huge eyeballs would fall out because of excessive staring. Aren't you guys Maori? Inferior race. If you don't move them, do you want me, the fisherman master, to move them? The fisherman butler put his hands on his waist and pointed at Ron and the rest as he spoke loudly with a hint of arrogance. It turned out that the Maori race was one of the inferior races in the Shiwalan continent. This race did not have strong fighting power. In this world where the strong ran rampant, in order to survive, they could only do the lowest level of manual labor to support themselves. This was also the reason why the fisherman butler asked them to move things. He treated the three Maori as manual labor. The surrounding workers were also Maori. They looked at Ron and the rest blankly, then turned their heads and continued with their work. When Shea heard this, she immediately turned her face. She was about to make a fuss, but was stopped by Ron. The fisherman butler's voice was very loud and attracted the attention of everyone around. Through the corner of his eye, Ron also saw several Naga Sea patrollers around them poking their heads out of the water and looking at the three of them with vigilant eyes. The patrollers were one of the guards of Gatalamandan, equivalent to the guards of other cities. If they made a scene, things would be difficult to deal with. Ron thought to himself, Move. I will reward you guys with Desos. Seeing that the three of them were not moving, the fisherman butler urged. Forget it. Let's move it. Ron said. He secretly cursed his bad luck. If he knew that the Maori were manual labor, he would not have disguised himself as a Maori. It would have been better to dress up as another race. Seeing that Ron nodded, Shea could only suppress her anger and began to move the things. Nicole did not say a word and lowered her head to take the boxes. The storm passed just like that. When the onlookers saw the fishermen reprimanding the Maori, they suddenly lost interest and turned their heads to look at the things they were interested in. The Naga Sea patrollers also slowly sank into the water and swam away. There were not many things, only a total of 10 boxes. The boxes were not heavy, and an ordinary adult could easily lift them. In fact, the fisherman butler could do these things alone, but he did not want to do it himself in order to show off his identity. Ron and the other two worked together and finished moving all of a sudden. 10 or so boxes were neatly placed in a corner of the cabin. Well, you guys did well. The fisherman butler's face finally showed a satisfied look. He smiled and said, "Very good, you can go down now." Okay. Ron wiped his sweat and was about to leave when Nicole did not move. She stretched out her hand and said, "Give it to me." "Give what?" the fisherman butler asked. Nicole said, "Of course it's a reward. Didn't you just say that? After we finished moving, you gave us a few pesos as a reward. Now that we're done moving, where's the money?" When he heard about the reward, the fisherman butler's face changed. He only wanted to get a few Maori to work for him for free. Who would have thought of giving a reward? Go, go, go. When did I say that I would give a reward? All of you, get off the boat. The fisherman butler scolded as he pushed Ron and the rest off the boat. When these words came out, the anger in their hearts rose. Although Ron only wanted to avoid trouble and never thought of any reward, the fisherman butler's attitude was infuriating. Nicole shouted loudly, "You're cheating. You said that you would give us a reward. If not, why would we help you move your things?" Nicole, who had a lot of money, naturally did not care about a few pesos. She could tell that the fisherman butler did not want to give them a reward at all. She was angry and made a scene. Nicole's voice was very loud and attracted the attention of the guests on the surrounding boats. When they saw that it was a Maori girl asking the fisherman butler for a reward, many of them smiled knowingly. Hee hee, this little girl is quite cute. She actually dares to ask the fisherman for a reward. It's good that she's not killed, a person said with a smile. Maybe she's too young and doesn't know what's good for her. She's just a lowly race. Who does she think she is? Another person laughed. Ha ha ha. The people on the other boats looked over. They were watching the argument between Ron and the rest as if they were watching a show. A few Maori who were working nearby looked at the boat and shook their heads regretfully. Bargaining with the fisherman butler, wasn't that asking for death? It was a pity that such a young girl was going to die. The fisherman butler would not show mercy to the fairer sex. Forget it, let's go. Ron reached out and pulled Nicole. He did not want to cause trouble and attract the fisherman butler's attention. He felt a little guilty about what he had done. In a foreign plane, it was not wise to cause trouble. Ron was trying to keep the peace, but Nicole was still unwilling to let it go. She waved her fists and shouted, "I don't care." He clearly agreed, but he didn't pay for the work. What kind of logic is that? Being mocked by the surrounding onlookers and the little Maori girl in front of him being unforgiving, the Murloc butler could no longer maintain his composure. Seeing that the soft approach did not work, he decided to use the hard approach. He gritted his teeth, and with a swoosh, a bright light flashed. The Murloc butler fiercely pulled out a long sword and shouted angrily, "Stop talking. Are you going or not? If not, I'll kill you." The fisherman butler's intention was to scare her. According to past experience, the Maori were very afraid of death. As long as he scared them, they would obediently leave. However, he was wrong. With a whoosh, a snow-white shadow appeared in front of his eyes, growing bigger and bigger. What was that? Before the fisherman butler could see clearly, he heard a thump and felt a sharp pain in his head. Stars flashed above his head, and then the world spun. Although Nicole was a necromancer, her strength was not weak. Under the sudden sneak attack, the fisherman butler received a solid punch at the corner of his eye. He staggered back a few steps, and the corner of his eye became bruised. Ha ha ha! The people on the other ships burst into laughter. Seeing the fisherman butler get beaten up, they laughed gloatingly. Ha ha ha! That fisherman was beaten up by the Maori. Oomph! The fisherman butler? He's a disgrace to the fisherman butler. Kill her! Kill her! Kill her! Kill her! At this moment, it was unknown who shouted, but the entire dock was in an uproar. Everyone's words converged into one voice. Those people's faces were filled with ferocious and bloodthirsty expressions. In this calm and chatty Japan, seeing bloody things always made one's blood boil. Entertainment show. This was a higher race's massacre of a lower race. There was no reason for it. Haha, fisherman butler, if you don't dare to kill her, your fishman butler can forget about living in the Shu'Alan continent. A person shouted strangely, stirring up the atmosphere. Ron's heart faintly flashed with a trace of unease. It was hard not to attract attention now. Nicole looked at her fist and then looked around. In an instant, she understood that she had become the focus of everyone's attention. Thinking of her mission, she was at a loss. You're courting death. The fishman butler was punched by Nicole in front of everyone. He flew into a rage out of humiliation. He looked at the little Maori girl in front of him, and a trace of murderous intent flashed in his eyes. His killing intent had been truly aroused. Inferior race, go to hell. The fishman butler shouted, and his body suddenly leaped. A black flame suddenly appeared on the long sword in his hand. The flame flickered and wildly slashed towards Nicole. Nicole's face was pale with fright. She did not know if she should react or not. Just as the black flames were about to engulf Nicole, they suddenly stopped. A large hand appeared out of thin air and grabbed the long sword's blade. It was Shaya. Shaya's tall body blocked in front of Nicole. The hood on her head had already floated down, revealing her beautiful silver hair. She said coldly, "Inferior race, relying on the strong to bully the weak. No matter how strong you are, you're just an empty shell without a soul." After saying that, Shaya's hand suddenly twisted. The fishman butler howled miserably like a pig being slaughtered. His hand was twisted into a fried dough twist by Shaya, and the intense pain was unbearable. Shaya sent a flying kick, and the fishman butler rolled into the cabin like a gourd. His head fiercely hit the wall of the cabin, and he almost fainted. You're not Maori." The fishman butler struggled to stand up. At this moment, he finally saw Shaya's face clearly and said in horror. Seeing Xiaolai, the surrounding ships burst into an uproar. "They're not Maori. They're humans. Humans. Wait, why do these humans look so familiar? Where have I seen them before?" A person rubbed his eyes and said, "I remember now. Didn't Princess Vitala offer a reward of 100 black crystal coins for finding these humans?" Another person said loudly, "I have their portraits." Saying that, he took out a piece of paper from his bosom. "That's right, it's them. They're the ones who attacked the Sea Clan's fleet. They're guilty of the most heinous crimes." A Sea Clan member pointed at Ron and the others and said loudly. Seeing Shaya's face and comparing it to the people in the portraits, the surrounding people on the ships cried out in alarm. They suddenly became excited, like hungry wolves who saw fresh blood. Ron stood on the ship and looked around blankly. At this moment, he knew that the matter of him attacking the Sea Clan's fleet on the secluded forest path had been exposed. Those people even had their portraits in their hands. Even now, Ron didn't know how the other party had found out about him. Even their appearances were clear as day. Capture them, and the 100 black crystal coins will be ours. At this moment, someone shouted. Immediately, everyone became excited as if they had taken drugs. Kill. Capture them. Capture these humans. Kill them. The crowd was in a frenzy, and with a single call, the people on the surrounding ships drew their weapons and shouted loudly as they approached. The allure of 100 black crystal coins was enough to make people go crazy. Many of them did not see the small line of words written under the portraits that they picked up. Note, these two are experts of the sacred domain. The surrounding people began to transform one after another. They came from various races, and some of them were extremely powerful. These people only had one goal, and that was to capture Ron and the others. Ron, what do we do now? Shaya asked anxiously. She bit her lips tightly, as if she knew that she had done something wrong. Her face was deathly pale from fright. At this moment, facing such a predicament, Ron laughed. He slowly took off his hood, and his perplexed expression returned to its previous unswerving determination. He quietly looked at the experts charging at him from all directions, and the corners of his mouth curled into a faint sneer as he softly spat out two words. Chapter 6:25. Bear! As if she had received an order, a large amount of black flames erupted from Shaya's body. She suddenly pulled out a long sword from her body, and like a whirlwind, she slashed at the people surrounding her. Blinded by greed, this referred to people who would disregard their lives for money. For the sake of a huge amount of wealth, under the incitement of some people, they even forgot to investigate the other party's strength. Boom, boom, boom. The powerful black flames continued to spread, shaking the surroundings. Shea's longsword flew up and down, and the attacks of the experts of various races who were charging over were instantly disintegrated. Novel chapters the longsword with holy light cut through the flesh of their bodies. Some people were seriously injured and fell into the sea while wailing, while others died on the spot. Stimulated by the fresh blood, those people finally woke up in an instant. Only then did they realize that the bounty target that was being besieged was actually an expert of the sacred domain. We are the prey. They're the hunters. The experts besieging Ron's group were finally frightened. Only now did they understand that the bounty of 100 black crystal coins offered by Princess Vitala was not so easy to obtain. They might even lose their lives if they were unlucky. Novel chapters. Everyone, don't panic. There are only 2 of them. Let's use long-range attacks to surround and kill them. At this time, someone shouted. Immediately, all the professions that could use long-range attacks launched their attacks at Ron's group. Greed could make people go crazy. Whitebone Spear. At this time, Ron also moved. Since the other party had already seen through his identity, he did not need to be polite anymore. He quickly summoned the Whitebone Spear and threw it at the experts who could use long-range attacks. The Whitebone Spear spun, bringing with it a strong wind sound. It was like the arrival of the Grim Reaper, rushing towards the experts of various races. Boom! The Whitebone Spear pierced through the deck of the ship, causing a strong explosion. The huge ship that was dozens of feet long was blown apart by Ron, and the experts of various races suffered heavy casualties. Skeleton Warriors. Skeleton Warriors. Terror Knights, come out. Ron laughed coldly and began to summon undead creatures. Kill these guys and use their souls as a sacrifice to our great death. As a black aura spread out, countless undead creatures were summoned. They held all kinds of weapons in their hands, and their eyes flashed with green light as they constantly roared. The Terror Knights that had returned from Hell rode on skeletal death horses and held huge sabers in their hands as they charged. Although Nicole was only a master wizard, she also participated in the attack. Perhaps because she was a necromancer, her attack power was not as strong as Ron and Shea's. Necromancers weren't a class that excelled in combat. Just as Nicole was in the middle of the battle, a powerful spell suddenly blasted towards Nicole. It was a powerful fire-type spell with extremely high temperatures. The fire elements drifting between heaven and earth were condensed into the shape of a longsword, which was hurtled directly toward Nicole. Whitebone Shield. Ron didn't dare to be careless. He strode in front of Nicole, and at the same time summoned the Whitebone Shield to block the incoming attack. Sparks flew in all directions, and the surrounding space seemed to be on fire, burning fiercely. Of course, this was only a master wizard spell, so it was impossible for it to break through Ron's defense. However, Nicole was so frightened that her beautiful face turned pale, and she kept burrowing into Ron's arms. Thank you. Nicole was still in shock. If it wasn't for Ron, she would have at least been seriously injured. At this time, a few more attacks blasted towards Nicole. In addition to the powerful spell, there were also a few crossbow bolts. Obviously, they had seen that Nicole was the weakest of the 3, so they mercilessly aimed all their attacks at her. Damn it! Ron naturally saw this, and he cursed in his heart and then shouted, "Kill them all! Don't leave a single one alive!" Ron's eyes were filled with intense, killing intent. After blocking the opponent's attack, he waved the dragon bone staff in his hand, and a faint red light instantly spread out in all directions. Curse spell, weaken. With the appearance of the curse spell, the strength of the various powerhouses was greatly reduced. They only felt that their strength was rapidly decreasing, as if their bodies were soft, and they couldn't exert the slightest bit of strength. What spell is this? One of them turned pale with fright. Not good, we've been cursed. Damn it, those damned undead. Some of them had already recognized Ron's curse spell. It was an attack spell from the undead, and at the same time, they all used their magic to get rid of the negative effects on their bodies. You actually know the curse spell? Nicole whispered as she watched Ron cast the spell. Her face was full of envy. The curse spell was an extremely difficult technique to master, and not just any necromancer could learn it. "I've learned a little," Ron nodded and said in a deep voice. He hesitated for a moment. "Nicole, don't participate in the attack anymore. Hide behind me. I'll protect you, okay?" At this critical moment, Nicole no longer acted coquettishly. She also understood that she was too weak and wouldn't be of much use in this kind of battle. At this moment, Shaya had already summoned the nightmare beast. This death chariot, whose whole body was burning with flames, brought great pressure to everyone. Shaya tenderly shouted and rode the nightmare beast, rushing out like a whirlwind. The nightmare beast jumped high and directly jumped over the bow of the ship. In the blink of an eye, it landed in front of the various powerhouses that were attacking from a distance. These powerhouses came from various races, and they had all kinds of strange appearances. Some had green skin and held 2 flying axes in their hands, but they were beastmen. Some had green faces and fangs, and they were constantly throwing spears. There were also some with long horns. The races that Ron and the others couldn't name were all stunned when they saw Shaya suddenly appear in front of them. Shaya's snow-white hair fluttered in the wind, and her entire body was wrapped in black flames. She was like a death god that had descended from the sky, and her whole body was filled with the aura of death. As a death knight, her mission was to bring death to people. Die! Shaya's eyes flashed with murderous intent. The longsword in her hand mercilessly slashed down, and in the blink of an eye, a master-rank beastman warrior was split in half. Not good. The Death Knight is coming. Run, help. Melee classes were the nemesis of ranged classes. The premise was that they had to come in front of ranged classes. Ranged classes usually didn't have strong defenses, and once they got close to them, they would only be waiting to be slaughtered. Kill, kill, kill. Shaya's eyes turned red from killing. In an instant, more than a dozen powerhouses from various races fell into a pool of blood. Shaya's sudden attack caused the attacks on Ron to collapse. Shaya and Ron had a tacit understanding of each other, and they chased down the fleeing powerhouses one by one. The dock was ablaze, and dozens of ships were burned. A large amount of flames and dust floated into the air, forming a spectacular, huge black smoke column. The smoke column was filled with fire, and half of Gadali could see it. The fierce battle on the dock finally attracted the attention of the residents of Gadali. They walked into the street, looking at the black smoke column in the sky with astonished eyes, and began to talk about it. "It's on the dock. Is someone fighting?" A person asked in surprise. "It seems so, but I don't know which blind guy dares to make trouble in Gadali. It seems that he is tired of living." Another person said with a proud smile. "Not necessarily. The person who is making trouble seems to be a powerhouse from the sacred domain." The previous person said with a hint of doubt. "So what if he is a powerhouse from the sacred domain?" "Even if he is a powerhouse from the sacred domain, he will die if he encounters the powerful Naga Siren." At this time, another onlooker interrupted and said, "Look, the guards of Gadali have been dispatched." Dang, dang, dang. Sure enough, after seeing the smoke column rising into the sky, someone rang the giant bell on the roof of the central building of Gadali, and the melodious sound of the bell spread throughout the city. It was a battle alarm, indicating the arrival of a powerful enemy. In the memory of the residents of Gadali, the central bell had not been rung for a long time. The last time it was rung was 100 years ago. After the bell rang, the entire city seemed to have been awakened. The entire city became boiling. The powerful guard force of Gadali began to be activated. Crash! Outside the palace, in front of the shop, in the dark corners of the street, in the sewers, in every corner of the city, one by one, heads poked out of the water. Dark golden eyes, ferocious heads, huge bodies, sharp teeth, and long snake-like tails. Countless Naga patrollers floated up from the water with various weapons in their hands. They looked at the huge smoke column above Gadali, and their faces showed strong indignation. With a low roar, their bodies swam quickly. In the water, their bodies were as flexible as swimming fish. On the water streets of Gadali, hundreds of Naga sirens gathered into a black torrent, quickly crowded the streets of the city, and quickly swam in the direction of the dock. Whoever made trouble in Gadali Mandan, no matter who it was, must die. There was only one belief in the hearts of all the Naga sirens, and that was that the troublemakers had been put on the death blacklist by them. At this time, the battle at the dock was nearing its end. The experts of various races who had besieged Ron and Xiao were either dead, injured, or fleeing. The remaining ones were begging for mercy, and no one dared to attack them again. At this moment, those greedy people understood that they had made a fatal mistake and kicked an iron plate. The survivors regretted it so much that their intestines turned green. The people who died were their people and companions. Boom! Ron used Frost Nova to blast a powerhouse who participated in the siege into pieces. The corpses with broken ice, blood, and internal organs covered the deck, forming an extremely cruel scene. Another one killed. Ron glanced at the pile of minced meat indifferently and then looked away. His heart was already as firm as a rock. At this time, Ron's heart moved. He felt a slight vibration on the surrounding water, as if something was surging over. It was menacing and extremely fast. What's that? Ron frowned. Through the crows in the sky, he saw a strange picture. Suddenly, he was shocked. Not good. The Naga army is coming. Let's retreat. Ron said loudly to Shea, who was riding a nightmare beast and chasing after the fleeing powerhouses of various races. Okay. Shea didn't talk nonsense. She turned her horse's head and flew back like an acrobat. She quickly jumped over the burning ship. The nightmare beast's 4 flaming hooves left a series of charred marks on the deck. Nicole, let's go quickly. It'll be too late if we're late. Ron said to Nicole. Okay. Nicole nodded obediently and was about to leave. At this time, through the light of the sun, she saw a faint shadow on the ground. It was rapidly approaching, and the shadow's body revealed a strange reflection. Nicole was shocked and shouted, Ron, be careful. Unfortunately, the shadow's speed was extremely fast. Nicole's warning was a bit late. The shadow suddenly appeared in front of Ron, holding a shiny dagger in its hand and fiercely stabbing at Ron. Ron's eyes widened. The sneak attack was too sudden, and he didn't have time to react. Chapter 626. Ron, Shea exclaimed. Asterisk, 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 everything happened too fast, too sudden. By the time Shea rushed over, the black shadow had already escaped far away. Ron, are you all right? Shea jumped down from the nightmare beast and quickly ran over. She reached out to support Ron, her eyes filled with concern. At this time, Ron felt a numbing sensation coming from his wound. He looked down and saw green blood flowing out from the wound. That dagger is poisoned. Ron was shocked. Ha ha! The black shadow turned around and jumped onto the tall mast. He sneered. His red eyes stared at Ron with bloodthirsty eyes. At this time, he opened his mouth and said in a hoarse and low voice, How is it? Doesn't it taste good? I have waited for a long time for this opportunity. As soon as the shadow spoke, Ron felt that it was familiar. At this time, he understood that this person was the main culprit who had incited everyone to attack them. Every time those people retreated because of Ron and Shaya's strength, there would always be a voice that would appear at the right time and control them to attack. What's more surprising is that this black shadow is actually a powerhouse from the sacred domain. The black shadow was wrapped in a black robe, revealing only his eyes, making it impossible to see his true face. Who are you? Why are you making things difficult for us? Facing a powerhouse from the sacred domain, Ron's eyes showed a trace of caution as he asked in a deep voice. The black shadow smiled slightly. Although I don't have any enmity with you, but no one will make things difficult for money. The black shadow's meaning was clear. Everything he did was for money. In fact, when Ron's group appeared in Gadali Mandan, they were already targeted by him. Although Ron's group had put on disguise, the Black Shadow still recognized them. These 3 people were the mission issued by Princess Vitala. But when the Black Shadow wanted to make a move, he was in a difficult position. Ron's group had 2 powerhouses from the sacred domain, while he was alone. Moreover, the other party was obviously stronger than him. The small disturbance on the dock gave the Black Shadow an opportunity. He did not hesitate to add fuel to the fire. When Ron killed everyone and thought that the battle was over, he would give him a fatal blow. Ron's vision turned black, and his body was on the verge of collapse. The poison in his body began to act up. Shaya gritted his teeth and brandished the holy sword in his hand, his eyes burning with raging flames. "I'll go kill him." After saying this, she shouted loudly and jumped high into the air. The holy sword in her hand shone with a cold light under the scorching sun. The nightmare beast hissed and quickly followed her. Ga, 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 Ga. The Black Shadow laughed wildly. "You can't kill me. When those Naga patrollers arrive, my mission will be completed." As the Black Shadow spoke, he moved quickly, dodging Shaya's attack. Shaya's heart gradually became anxious because she felt that a large number of Naga Sea race experts were rapidly approaching from the sky, the land, and the water. The situation was extremely tense. Ron's vision gradually became blurry, and the poison had begun to invade his brain. However, at this extremely critical moment, his mind was extremely clear. Bone wall. Facing the blurry shadow that was constantly moving, Ron softly spat out 2 words. Suddenly, a wide, 3-meter-tall wall suddenly rose into the sky, blocking the path of the Black Shadow. The Black Shadow did not seem to expect this sudden bone wall and was about to hit it. He hurriedly stopped his body. It was at this moment of pause that Ron made his move again. Frost Nova. A bone-chilling cold energy quickly condensed and concentrated on the Black Shadow. Boom! The cold ice scattered, and the power of Frost Nova burst out. The bone-chilling cold instantly spread in all directions. Move? I can't move. The Black Shadow was shocked. He only felt that his body had become extremely stiff, and every step he took required a lot of energy. Of course, Shaya would not let go of this opportunity. She rode the nightmare beast and quickly caught up. The sharp sword swept across the Black Shadow's head. Gudong, Gudong. The Black Shadow's head rolled down the stairs of the ship until it rolled in front of Ron. The black cloth wrapped tightly around the head finally opened, revealing a hideous and terrifying face. Ron struggled to open his eyes and looked at the head at his feet. It was a race that he had never seen before. "It's the dark race," Nicole exclaimed. "This is a race that lives in the dark. During the day, they must be wrapped in black cloth. They are born with a superb stealth ability. They use poison and are good at assassination." Dark race. Ron smiled with difficulty. There were people who would lose their lives for money everywhere, and it was not limited to a race. However, Ron was not interested in what race they were. The only thing he wanted to do now was to leave. Ron's trembling hand reached for the space pouch at his waist and took out the antidote. He bit open the cap and drank it directly. After a while, the poison was almost completely removed. Ron also felt more energetic. When he reached into the space pouch to look for more potions of life, he was stunned. The box containing the potions of life was empty. The potions he brought from the Noah continent were all gone. This meant that Ron's injuries could not be treated effectively. Just as Ron was holding the empty box in a daze, a strange light lit up. After a while, Ron felt that the wounds on his body were no longer painful. He looked down and saw that the wounds had begun to scab. Nicole was holding a long staff in her hand. Her eyes were closed, and her mouth was constantly chanting something in a low voice. After chanting, she opened her eyes and smiled sweetly at Ron. "Nicole, you can heal?" Ron asked in amazement. As soon as the words came out of his mouth, he realized that he had asked nonsense. Nicole was a necromancer. Of course, she could heal. "They're here. It's the humans. Kill them." At this time, there was a loud noise from afar. It was the Sea Tribe's patrollers. When they saw Ron, they glared at him with bloodshot eyes and roared. "A mere human dares to cause trouble in Gadalamandan. Kill without mercy." The Naga patrollers were like an army, rushing over from afar. The area was densely packed with Naga patrollers, their numbers unknown. When the bell in the city rang, almost half of the patrollers in Gadalamandan gathered. Ron, what do we do now? Shea asked with a grave expression. Only then did she realize that all the roads were blocked. If she retreated any further, she would be looking at the boundless sea after the cataclysm. Regardless of the terrifying number of Naga patrollers, the fierce battle would inevitably alarm the sacred domain powerhouses of Gadalamandan. When the time comes for a battle in the sacred domain, Ron and the others may not be able to gain the upper hand. Not to mention they still have to protect a person. Flying in the air was not a problem, but a large number of magicians and sea witch hunters below were not to be trifled with. Flying in the air would only become their target. The situation was extremely critical. Ron, think of something. Nicole was so shocked that her face turned pale. She clutched tightly onto Ron's clothes, her voice trembling as she spoke. Ron looked at the swarm of Naga patrollers in front of him with a solemn expression. His mind was spinning rapidly. At this moment, Ron's gaze fell on the flying mast. His heart skipped a beat, and he instantly had an idea. It seems that the only way now is to go to sea. Ron thought for a moment and said, besides, according to our original route, aren't we going to sea? Go to sea. Shea's eyes lit up. This was a good idea. However, the problem was, who knew how to sail? Ron looked at Nicole, who shook her head, indicating that she didn't know how to sail either. At this time, Shea rolled her eyes. She suddenly turned around and walked quickly to the fishman butler. The fishman butler had long been scared out of his wits by Ron and other strength. He was about to quietly escape, but was caught by Shaya, who grabbed him by the collar and lifted him up. Don't kill me. The fishman butler waved his arms desperately and shouted in horror. Cut the crap. Do you know how to sail? Entertainment show? Shaya asked coldly. Sail? When the fishman butler heard this, he was stunned for a moment. He wanted to say that he didn't know, but he saw Shaya's murderous gaze coldly staring at him. The same artifact in her hand flashed with cold light. The fishman butler understood that as long as he said that he didn't know how to sail, his head would be separated from his body. The fishman butler swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty and stammered, I know a little humph. Shea coldly snorted, then quickly go and sail the ship. Yes. The fishman butler felt as if he had been pardoned. He hurriedly crawled to the cabin, but he heard Shea coldly added a sentence behind him. Remember, don't play any tricks, otherwise you are dead. When the fishman butler heard this, he didn't dare to play any tricks and obediently went to sail the ship. Ka. At this time, an ear-piercing mechanical sound came from the ship. Following a violent vibration under their feet, the heavy ship slowly started to move. At this time, other than Ron and the rest, there was no one else on the ship. They had already escaped when the battle started. The huge ship raised its sails and slowly sailed out of the dock. Not good. They want to escape on the ship. Quick, go and stop them. Don't let them escape, the Naga patrollers angrily shouted. Some sharp-eyed patrollers had already seen the faces of Ron, Shea, and Nicole. They knew that they were the humans that Princess Vitala had offered a bounty of 100 black crystal coins, so they couldn't let them escape. Some of the Naga patrollers had already jumped into the water and swam desperately towards the ship. They are coming, Shea said. Be careful, they are going to wreck the ship. Nicole turned pale with fright. Don't worry. At this time, Ron was abnormally calm. He smiled slightly, his eyes flashing with killing intent. Before I leave, I want to give him a small gift. As Ron spoke, his body slowly floated on the bow of the ship. At this moment, Ron's body was shrouded in black fog, and his pair of dark eyes had turned deep green. He held the dragon bone staff in his hand and chanted in a low voice. Powerful soul power continued to spread around. Nicole's body seemed to have been hit by a heavy blow. Her heart thumped uncontrollably. Her eyes widened in surprise, revealing a look of disbelief. This is death decay. Ron finally finished chanting the last syllable. He waved the staff in his hand, and a powerful death aura burst out. Boom! With the dock as the center, the powerful death aura quickly spread out. The death aura with strong corrosive power swallowed everything that could be swallowed. Be careful. He has cast a forbidden spell. No, I don't want to die. Before it started, Ron blasted the dock with his most powerful attack magic. The dock was already filled with countless Naga patrollers. They squeezed each other and screamed in horror. They couldn't even hide. They could only watch as their bodies were completely corroded and disappeared. Boom! 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 Under the powerful death aura, the dock finally collapsed, burying everything around it, including the destruction of all the ships. Ron's attack killed many Naga patrollers and also cut off their hope of pursuing. They could only stand helplessly in the water, resentfully watching the huge ship sail out of the dock, leave the harbor, and sail read_link_up. They're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.